Hello, everyone, and welcome back to
Shalom, O Israel. Shalom, Aloha.
Geo. What did I
What's
tell
that?
you? What did I tell you about
Jewish prayer.
casting Talmudic curses
Oh,
on my program? This, you know what? We're
why am I
ending.
saying the Jewish prayer?
It's over
Sorry, that
before
was
it
the
even.
part from the Believer where he starts to,
Oh,
Oh my
Ryan
God.
Gosling, the Believer.
oh.
He
Oh
starts saying the
God.
Jewish prayer, and the only way to get you gotta love them. Listen, we on War Report we can do. I was gonna do a Freudian slip. We condemn all forms of anti-Semitism.
Oh,
Yeah.
100%.
hands down, this is the best intro to any episode that we've ever had. But needless to say, we have our good friend Geo back, which means you can be certain that nothing ever happens and that nothing is happening right now. Because
Nothing
Geo,
happening, gang. Do we get too cocky?
not cocky enough, but I digress. I digress. But yeah, we just put out an episode yesterday. Plenty more to cover today, and not to mention, it's always a pleasure to have Geo. So I couldn't say no to the opportunity. I can never say no to the opportunity. So
Yeah.
here we are. I know that we covered more of the nitty gritty last episode, but the direction we want to take with this, of course, there are some updates we will get into. But we wanted to
Yeah.
get into a little bit of speculation, what the short and long term future looks like. I know we touched on that a little, but I really want to have a discussion about, well,
Mm.
what does this mean now,
It's a
especially
brand
with
new
all.
war.
Yeah, it's
It's a new war that's been going on for 70 years.
hey, it's new to me.
Uh, Now Zoomers are gonna get to know what an intifada is. Oh,
I mean,
oh.
all I can think of right now is it goes around every time something happens with Israel and Palestine. That one post about the guy who goes into the deli owned by Arabs and the guy who goes into the Jewish deli. And I suppose you all know, but for those of you who don't, in the Arab deli, he starts cursing Israel. The guy tells him it's on the house. He goes to the Jewish deli, starts cursing the Palestinians and the Arabs. Then the Jewish guy says loudly 1275.
No, that was a joke from my friend Antediluvian on Twitter. He goes, "Now's the time to get the best stuff for free at Arab bakeries. Just you have to do a bit of theater. Just go in and be like, I can't believe it, brother. It's finally happening." Oh, but it's no laughing matter. I mean, thousands of people are going to die. I mean, that's just
Yeah.
inevitable every time this happens. But before we get into thousands of people dying and Israel committing various war crimes, um, well, I mean, they already shut off their wall. It's very funny how a lot of these neocons are like, do they deserve what they just did? It's like, well, I don't know. It's kind of like it's one of those sticky things where, I mean, listen, from my perspective, the E-right has just been aflame with trying to like. There's this weird panopticon of or discourse, self-participatory panopticon where everyone has to like police like what the other's take is going to be, and not like have like the take that appears the most cucked or leftoid. Or so it's like, can we support like, don't use, I mean, yeah, it is kind of like using the term, the language post-colonialism is, BS. But then it's like, what side do you have to pick? I guess, both sides hate us in their own way. So I don't know. It's like one of those things. But before we get into that, me and Goran, we were talking about Iran, and
Yeah.
yeah, you were talking about how this could potentially put the oil in Suez Canal. So maybe just to like, I have a take
Yeah.
about
Yeah.
Iran too. But yeah, go ahead.
Yeah. So okay. So the yesterday night, Constantine and I were touched upon possible reasons why this is happening that aren't the immediate reasons, like Hamas
The
did this.
mosque getting
Hamas
raided
did
by.
this. It was bad, and so we have to wipe them off the face of the earth, and that's all there is really to it. So I in September, Biden paid a visit to and there was talk of a new trade corridor that would bypass the Suez Canal. Now, it's important because if I remember correctly, Egypt is going to be a country that will eventually be in BRICS, but Iran and Saudi Arabia are more closely are further along. Okay.
Yeah.
Obviously, that also indicates that there could be trouble in Egypt, where the Suez Canal might be blocked. Like, let's say, for instance, a Wagner base that shouldn't happen in Sudan, or an American base that will go up there, or one of the islands off the coast of Yemen that Israel has gotten the rights to, right? That will stop traffic. It's a choke, right? And they want an alternative. Even if the choke isn't supposed to happen right away, or it's a slow choke, they want this. And so basically, it would be trade from the Gulf states. Iran may or may not be part of it, but India, of course, is. Go through, like, let's say Qatar or United Arab Emirates, and then it would go across Saudi Arabia, into Jordan, into Israel, and terminate in Haifa, and after which all the goods would be sent to Greece by ship. Okay.
Yeah.
So in some ways, it's similar to what the Russians have done with their construction of railways linking St. Petersburg with Iran by extending the rails down to the Caspian Sea, and then ships go down the length of the Caspian Sea to Iran, and then Iran trades, whatever goods that way, right? And Russia has a deal with Iran to do that. Okay. And they're building a railway system and so on, right? So what if, like, Israel believes that in order for this to work, they cannot have instability in the country, right? Because it's a railway system. It's much more vulnerable than a ship. Now, Chevron has a few drilling rigs in the sea, in the Eastern Mediterranean, 14 kilometers off the coast of Gaza. And the Israeli authorities today asked them to shut operations because they're afraid something could happen, right? These past few days, the Hamas has had successful attacks on, I believe, on Ascalon and Zikim, where they landed boats, essentially avoided having to break through barriers. Okay, so that's the India angle, right? The other angle is the oil and gas angle, right? So a perplexing problem for the West. And if you've ever watched, like, programs of, I used to watch them a lot more than I do now. But I used to watch, I still do from time to time, but I used to watch quite regularly the Atlantic Council to kind of figure out where things were going geopolitically, because it's the Pentagon essentially funds it, right? So not just NATO, of course, that's the reason it's called the Atlantic Council. But from what I understand, the Marines, the Navy, the Air Force, all of them contribute money to it. So it's a Pentagon operation, right? And the problem for the West is that the two biggest gas supplies in the world are both quote unquote enemies of the gay, Iran and Russia. And nothing, I think, more dramatically revealed this than in 2016 when Trump got elected, because it brought out a whole can of worms, right? Trump was anti Biden even before that, but there's clearly some kind of a clique between the Bidens, the Obamas, and to a lesser extent the Clintons. Okay.
Well, the Obamas basically own the Bidens. That's more or less, yeah.
Right. So, the Bidens also made deals with the Chinese and with the Ukrainians. Everybody knows about Hunter Biden and Burisma, right?
Yeah.
So
why Trump got impeached, because he dared ask
yes.
Kyiv to hand over records.
That's
What
right.
got him impeached. Yeah. So
That's right. And all of it is true. Like all of it is true because Political already in, I believe, August, but it was definitely 2017, but I think it was August. I still remember that issue where they revealed that Hunter Biden, was getting over $45,000 a month. He couldn't speak Ukrainian or Russian, never sat on any meeting. It was just a cash cow. And then that famous meeting, it was not at the Atlantic Council. It might have been at the Carnegie Endowment, or it might have been the IMF. But Biden was there, and he so proudly the audience about how he threatened the head attorney of Ukraine for investigating Burisma, and he asked Poroshenko to get rid of him, to fire him, or Ukraine wouldn't get 1 billion. So the basic logic was this, right? And it's part of the reason why we already have said it on the show before, but it's also why there was a war with Azerbaijan, because there is this kind of a desperate need that the Europeans have to like choke out Russia, to impoverish Russia, right? Like if they succeed in that, then all these other little players that contribute to that, as soon as that happens, they become irrelevant because Russia is the real resource cash cow of the world. Liquefied natural gas, or just natural gas through pipelines, is this kind of intermediary fuel to get us, like, it's a jump from fossil fuels into the green agenda, and how much they push the green agenda, right? So, but you can also see how much of an enemy Russia is to them. So that's why they fired up coal burning factories again in Europe, just to stick it to Putler. So the trouble has been how to get a different source of natural gas to Europe that could utilize Ukraine's Soviet era pipelines, like the Druzhba, but without the gas coming from Russia. Okay, and the desire was to get Iran to do it, Azerbaijan, Iran, right? And so the Biden administration, this is why they were always so. Remember that the Biden administration just granted them something like $6 billion to the Iranians just a few weeks ago and released some of their prisoners, right? The Iranians got a very good deal. And then Iran said to Hamas, go. Yeah. Okay, that's based. You imagine they're that dastardly, right? So,
Khomeini, he envisioned. Well, we'll get to that. I'll get to that. But
yeah,
finish.
You believed me, you Satan dog American?
He predicted basically in his writings that Israel will weaken itself by alienating everyone around it. So I wonder. We'll get to that. We'll get to that take.
So this is why there was the JPCOA. This is why, Obama gave them something like $50 billion. This is also why Benjamin Netanyahu lost his freaking mind and got Finkelstein, who helped get him elected, who also helped Orban get elected, to work on Trump's campaign, right? And what did Finkelstein do but tell him, look, you're not going to win. You can win the Republican vote, but to beat Hillary, you need talking points like immigration. Number one is immigration. Jobs, better jobs back into America, bring back industry, all that kind of stuff.
That's interesting.
Yeah, that's getting to the point where Trump made those comments.
You can't beat Hillary unless you go that angle. If you do, you will win, right? That's what Finkelstein said to him.
Would you say, Constantine?
And that's actually getting back to the point, if you recall in the 2016 campaign, Trump mocking Romney for quote-unquote choking when Finkelstein pretty much made him the same offer. But he more or less refused.
Exactly. It's good you brought that up. That's true. So basically now what you had, remember all the pre-election hype, you would have like Orban, Putin, Trump, Duterte, Bolsonaro,
who else is in that stack?
And then sometimes in that stack, although
Lukashenko,
the
maybe.
cool kids would say, no, get out, you're not part of the stack. But once in a while he'd be allowed, and that would be Netanyahu.
Yeah, because that's another narrative in the E-right that like, people are secret Likudniks that are like, Likud
I
is
mean, that's
based
just
in like
that's
the
just
cuck
that's just
libtards and
Mossad
the
shit. That's just Mossad shit. All Netanyahu was doing was trying to galvanize support for Trump, because Trump then would kill the deal, kill the JPCOA, maybe get some of that money back. He would find a way to hurt Iran, right? And what is that also? But what else does it tell you? Netanyahu had a good relationship with Putin. Well, the reason is Netanyahu believes an Iran that is wealthy and prosperous and has already advanced technologically, even up until Russia, the most sanctioned country in the world.
Yeah.
Maybe it's in a competition with North Korea, but it's either number one or two, right? That for them is terrifying. They don't want that, right? And so Iran, unless its regime changed, it cannot be brought in as a supplier of gas to Europe. Netanyahu was
like
not going to allow that to
They
happen.
won't want that either because of
What's that?
Iran, hitting gay people or whatever. Yeah.
Like all these are like small little moral theatrics that are done to galvanize public opinion, but it's not really the motivation of what they do. And
they hated on right since the 80s with revolutionary government, because it proved that if you, I mean, even I hate to bring this up, but this is like old NRX like Thermidor magazine day talking points. But basically, Iran proved that you could have a quote unquote conservative revolution in the modern world if you have a revolution based on something other than the predicates of like Western liberalism and the way that, the bona fides of like, say, the French Revolution onwards, and the way that Iran based it within Islamism and so forth. But that's like besides the point. But I think that's why the GA has always like hated Iran, besides the obvious point about like it threatens Israel. Obviously.
Right.
But
because if you're saying that age of so-called Enlightenment revolutions in Europe that took place is merely a sign of the evolution of society, then you have to accept that America is the premier, the penultimate example of this evolution of nationhood.
100%.
And all of them must go in this direction, right? So it would have granted them immense cultural power, right? Because kind of the way Tony Blair always frames everything as an inevitability, the Americans framed that about like themselves. So, and why they should lead the world.
Well, because Iranian, like Islam in Iran, like people don't get this, right? Because you have to like actually read Khomeini's writings. They don't have their vision of quote unquote the global caliphate is much different than the Arabs and people like even Hamas. Like it's, you know what I mean? So it's not as totalizing, or at least it wasn't up until now. But of course, I think what happened under, what was his name during the Bush? He was like the biggest guy, but then they like, the media just stopped caring about him because he got out of power. The guy during Bush, everyone used to make fun of him.
Ahmadinejad.
Yeah.
Ahmadinejad, yeah. But like, that guy was actually pretty smart for his day. But he had to like Arabize the vision of the caliphate to go along with what was happening, to go along with the other Arab countries, the other Islamic countries during the GOWAD, the global war on terror. But before that, Iran had a very different vision of their own revolutionary Islam than, say, the Arab states.
Right.
Yeah.
So, so just to go a little bit
people are talking about that shit again. GOWAD. Oh my God. We're back into Gore. We're 3.
Wow, good times.
Constantine, don't you love it? I mean, we're gonna get. Creed is gonna tour again.
Oh, beautiful.
Lee Greenwood's gonna sing "God Bless the USA" again in Chase Stadium. SmackDown is gonna be good again. We're gonna bring back Scott Steiner to debate some libtard. Did you know that Scott Steiner debated a libtard on SmackDown?
No, I didn't even know.
No, it's alright. It's okay.
So
No, it was Raw. It was Raw. It was Monday Raw. It wasn't SmackDown.
I have
He
but
debated
one
Chris
response
Stefanski.
to all of this, and that is your optimism disgusts me.
so
Anyway, sorry,
let me just finish with this, and I promise we'll move on. Okay,
because that
so
takes on Iran's position.
so you have two different ideas about how to go forward, about which country to court, right? One side thinks it's easier to court and change Iran. The other one thinks it's easier to do that with Russia. Obviously, what we know from 2022, that the easier one would still be Iran, right?
Yeah.
In neither case, right, can these countries provide energy to Europe unless they change their culture, right? That's a given, because that would only enhance American soft power, right? People have all kinds of presumptions that they think are theirs that are really just based on, like a kind of amorphous American view of history and the world that they adopt as their own. So that is another layer over the one that I described in the show that we recorded yesterday on the Indian route. I think both of them kind of help to explain some of the motivations. And so now the question is, right? The question is, who is this going to serve?
Yeah.
Is Netanyahu going to come out and talk? Because everybody knows about the protests that have been going on there for months.
Yeah.
Even the military kind of rebelled against him to some degree, right, over his judicial legislation that he wanted to introduce. Anyways, I just thought, okay, so that's keep that in mind when we talk about all the kind of machinations that are taking place now.
Yeah.
Okay, and that's it.
Well, I would, Constantine, you go first, my friend.
Well, I actually did want to return to the point you were making about energy supplies to Europe, relating particularly to Iran and Russia, because I do think it returns to something I had mentioned the last episode from yesterday, and that is what we saw in the early 2000s with the seeming reconciliation between the European Union and Russia, at least on economic terms, that lasted up until the annexation of Crimea in 2014, was something, and I'm not going to say entirely, but something of an independent foreign policy on Europe's part, where maybe diplomatically they were not on good terms with Russia, but the pipelines were open, the gas and oil kept flowing, and that marginalized American influence. And their shoe-in was the Maidan. Their shoe-in was these other color revolutions in the margins. One might think Georgia. Their shoe-in was NATO expansion. And once again, we've seen this since, I think, the first wave of post-Soviet NATO expansion was in 99, and then 04, 08, etc., and to present day, that is. But we did see what looked like the beginning of an American marginalization in the role of Europe. And that's actually around the time when you have, number one, the Maidan, which drives a wedge between the Russians and the Europeans, especially in economic terms, the first wave of sanctions that came from Crimea. And then you have 2014, 2015, 2016, the JCPOA, the Iran deal, where an administration in Washington led by one wing that you were describing collaborates with the Europeans and even the Russians and the Chinese to a degree to open up trade relations with Iran, to try to tap into their energy resources. Also trying to get a foot in the door culturally, because as American economic influence comes, so does American cultural influence. We've seen this time again. But, and then as you were describing, you had Trump come and tear up the deal, but also taking the softer approach towards Russia. I do think that it really, for some reason, and it's a bit beyond my understanding, but American foreign policy time again comes back to the subjugation of Europe in particular. And there's many reasons you could speculate for that. I certainly have mine. I won't get into into too much detail about them right now. But it is about that, and like so I'm glad you brought up the insight of America being the premier nation in terms of human progress according to these ideals, because it from that flows the domination of Europe. From that flows Russia either needs to get on board or be dismantled. Iran either needs to get on board, be dismantled. China, etc. But it 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 really all does come to a head with that now, doesn't it? And it, they've painted themselves into a corner, that being the Washington regime, on both sides of this, where they have completely solidified at this point a block between Russia, China, Iran, particularly Iran and Russia when it comes to the question of energy. And they've isolated themselves. They keep putting on more sanctions. Something like half the world's population is under American sanctions at this point. This is old news here. And then all they are left with, and I'm not suggesting that the current Hamas operations were some sort of complete false flag. Now, I believe in the possibility of elements of that. I'm not going to say one way or another, given the information that I have available to me. But it is just the perfect excuse that they need to inflame tensions, to dis- disrupt this block. But once again, also on the other side, this is a very convenient occurrence for disrupting the trade route that the U.S. is trying to build from India, from the east, into Europe as well. So it is hard to pin down, admittedly, but I do think we will have more information in the coming weeks that will make it a bit easier to put. But I would say ultimately, what we're looking at is a combination of opportunism on the side of, say, the Iranians, and to a lesser extent the Russians. I'm not gonna say that this is their main priority, especially with the situation in Ukraine, and also, I mean, even the Caucasus, that's still like right on their doorstep. A combination of opportunism from one side and desperation from the other, really coming together to create the perfect storm.
Pardon me. Gio,
Yeah.
did you want to add anything?
Oh, about Iran. I think that it's interesting when you factor in the pipeline thing, because as we were saying, like in Afghanistan, why they had to control the air. I mean, Zbigniew Brzezinski said this back in the 90s, that you have to control ideally both, but either Afghanistan or Iran. So it's like, yeah, I think that, you know, I'm looking at it from the angle of what Israel could possibly do if they were to engage in a hot level conflict, because there's a lot of people in the IDF and the Knesset that are like, doing their like crazy ethno narcissism of like, we're going to bomb Assad, we're going to bomb installations in Iran, we're going to bomb Hezbollah. And if if they were to get bogged down in a hot conflict similar to the Vietnam War, and if Iran is on more or less friendlier relations with Saudi Arabia, but with China and Russia, the BRIC nations, I think that in some odd way, it's indicative of the drift of the Middle East away from America after their 20-year involvement in the region. Well, actually, if you want to go all the way back to like Mohammed Mossadegh and elsewhere, I mean, they've been in the region forever. But in terms of the recent era, Iran is not like this disheveled, failed state that we'd like to think of as in the West. I mean, yes, it has a lot of demographic problems and so forth. But at the same time, I think that, in a lot of ways, Israel just simply cannot afford a war in the region for a variety of reasons. The situation with their munitions and so forth, like you were saying about the Suez Canal, if they have hostilities with I think that I'm trying to this about Iran. I think that in the future that if they manage to have a stable relationship with Saudi Arabia, there definitely is. I mean, again, not to like devolve into like, Duganist or Broadism, but I definitely think that the power of the GAE in the region, if there were to be an instance where the Arab nations and Iran come, or at least partially comes out on top in any hot conflict, I mean, the consequences for Israel and America would just be, devastating. Because people were speculating that, is this a way for Bibi to like ensure his own power and to erase the like protests and the potential color revolution that happened last year? I'm skeptical of that for the reason that I think if there was a case where this translates to a conflict similar to, say, the and they get bogged down within a very intense urban warfare with like Iranian Iranian-backed Hamas and Hezbollah, and like against like IDF conscript Zoomers and millennials from Tel Aviv. This isn't going to work, and the munitions problem with sending their munitions to Kiev and so forth. I think in some ways it would weaken Bibi's position if he were handed any military defeat. I think that's a huge one. It wouldn't be, because this is like neocon logic, is that, oh well, if you fight a war, then that's going to ensure your power no matter what. Like, this is the post-World War II consensus of warfare. It just, I don't think it will work in this case. But in terms of Iran, I mean, yeah, they have a lot of problems, but at the same time, they are indicative of this trend in the region away from the influence.
Israel does not take Iran lightly.
No, they don't.
I think Israel understands Iran's potential.
No, that's what I was going to say. Sorry, Gordon. That's what I was going to say. I was going to say that you were saying that the moralistically they cannot entertain LGN or oil from Iran, right? Now,
unless the regime in Iran was completely revamped under American control. Without that, Iran could never be allowed, to prosper.
Yeah, and I was saying about how they've hated them since the 80s, even like the Soviet Union and America tag teaming against them in the 80s during Iran-Iraq. So I would think that in some ways a regime-changed Iran would be even more useful to America than Israel. I mean, that's 100%. I mean,
Israel is always going to be speculative and uncertain. Yes. It's always going to have that level of paranoia.
It will always find something
in a way
about.
And this is why they've always sought the entire Middle East, because that's the only thing that will alleviate their paranoia.
Well, I was going to say that I was going to say it later on in the show, but I guess we get to it now because it also has Iran. But I think like the problem with a lot of reductionistic analysis based on pure rational choice or geopolitical interest is not really going to get at the politics of the region. Now, I say that a regime changed Iran would, of course, materially be way better for North America and for Europe. Obvious. This is obvious. But we know that the certain ethnic, spiritual, other interests that go into this, especially like neocon fetish for Israel, like, in America. So I think like that point is moot. It's like, today I saw this tweet. Let me bring it up. There was this tweet. I have it in my bookmarks here by, is it you right? Or Wyvert. I think he's some like rationalist or whatever. He says the best scenario for Gaza was to become a self-governing charter city on the shores of the Mediterranean, a hub for commerce, airlines, tourism. Be nice to Israel, work hard to create a beautiful city. I choose resentment, dreams of vengeance, and G-word-eyed. A few hypotheses. Owners ideology of Islam with the sort of Brotherhood, and because Hamas is being sponsored by the Muslim Brotherhood. Disdain
for a long time.
Yeah, a very long time. A great many people simply prefer to enjoy resentment and envy. The condition was all there. 2005 Israel ended its occupation of God. Well, that's bullshit. They didn't end the occupation for shit. Self-governing. Why would a decent government have? What would a decent government have done? Promulgate a charter, constitution guaranteed by perhaps Dubai and Singapore, attract investment. Now, here's the problem with this. This is pure rationalist nonsense.
Yeah, yeah.
This is neo-rat like.
You'd have to believe that. You'd have to believe
Yeah.
that Israel would trust the Gaza Strip.
Yeah, yeah.
10 kilometers by 25 kilometers.
Yeah.
That it would allow it to grow financially powerful.
Yes.
What it ostensibly thinks is its own territory.
Right.
As if Israel would have that kind of generosity.
Has no play
it's ridiculous.
With yeah, no, like claims to ancestral homeland and ethnic hatred, like that's no, like again, this is the problem with Yudkowsky, less wrong style rationalism and libertarian like economic free choice assessment that Friedrich Hayek and other people talked about. It's pure nonsense because it doesn't factor in the very real spiritual, ethnic, racial, cultural,
and metaphysical.
And metaphysical. Yeah. That's what I mean. Like, and so and here's the thing. I know the whole thing about decolonization is conceptually cucked from a writing perspective, but at the same time, you have to acknowledge this huge disparity there between Palestine and Israel. I mean, it's pretty obvious, right? So
I mean, Israel destroyed their airport, right?
100%. Yeah. Well, they control their water and everything.
Yeah. Fishermen go out there for like. They're only allowed to go a certain distance. They're all monitored. Why? Because, well, they're always paranoid that Egypt is going to send them weapons. Or there's a group, not Egypt, the government of Egypt proper, but some radical group. The Muslim Brotherhood has a long storied history of its presence in Egypt and in Turkey.
Yeah, in Egyptian affair. Well, yeah, and in Turkey. Yeah.
And so, of course, they're going to speculate that this will bite them. I mean, deep down inside, I think for the Israelis, what I think they think that like Israel has to become an entirely Jewish ethno state. Every non-Jew has to be expulsed for them to survive.
Including Christians.
Yes, including Christians eventually.
Yeah, but my point was that it works similar to Iran, because of the ideological, metaphysical, and cultural dispositions of people in power in the State Department, in the Knesset, and everywhere, that Iran seems to just attract this huge. And maybe Giorgiani's right, or there's something sacred about Iran. I mean, well, I don't know. He has a lot of crazy theories, but no. The point being is that, geographically, and I would say even metaphysically, Iran has something to it that makes empires wet themselves over and over again. And so it belies, it belies all of these concerns that are happening. And it's not just simply to say, what if Iran had more of a advantageous government to the West? Then they would go along with them. Why can't they play fairly? What happened to free choice theory? Like, this is all bullshit because,
of course,
it's, the liberal mind is like so naive in some ways, right? Like,
yes.
Like the naivety of it is that they don't understand how these people are. They don't understand the history there. They don't understand like what they think and feel. Even people within the Iranian parliament, in the revolutionary government, I mean,
The only thing they understand is desire, but not the cessation of desire.
Exactly. Oh,
this is.
Yeah. From the Duddy-Ching. Yeah. No, but it's same with Ukraine, right? I mean, there was this. It always comes up with like these retarded. I don't know if you could say that on YouTube anymore. These like tarded like pro NATO NAFO people, where it's like Russia would have played nicely after we gutted them, destroyed them, and highest abortion and alcohol rate and men dying at the age of 55, and eluding them blindly. If they only would have played, if Putler would have played nicely with the West, then NATO. Remember, NATO is a voluntary organization. It's like, it's a defensive
Except every time the
alliance.
Russians asked, they were told no.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Oh, but the reason they were told no, get this. This is what people said. There was this history video that was pretty popular on YouTube Shorts, and all these libtards. You know what their excuse was? Oh, well, Russia, Putler asked NATO to ask him, where nobody else got that. Actually, he
That's
should have
baloney.
just
They asked in the 90s when Putin wasn't even
no, but they say because he asked them to ask him that he wanted to be treated specially, and therefore, like in our childish morality, it's like,
as if that's verifiable.
I mean, even assuming that's the case, if we are to, and look, I know, I exactly, who cares? I know the kind of people.
You know why? Who cares, Constantine? Because Russia's fucking different. It's different than Poland, and Russia's different than all the other expansionist countries. You know why? Because Russia's been tangled with Europe for 400 to 1,000 years, and it's a huge multi-ethnic empire in its own right. And it's to say that the history of Russia is different than any other little fucking Potemkin village of the West. I mean, it's insanity. Okay, same with Iran. Iran is an ancient civilization. It should be treated differently. It has more power in the region for a reason. Like, these people, like, they really infuriate me when it comes down to, because they have no sense of history, or they have no sense of sacredness. They have no sense of how people actually think and feel, and what they believe. Okay, you don't have to like what Iran is doing. You don't have to like what Russia's doing, but you have to acknowledge that like the liberal rules-based order where all nations are equal. I'm sorry, that is not the case, and that is never the case. And that will never be the case. That all nations are treated equal.
And they don't even believe that.
Are all American citizens treated equal?
I don't know. It sounds like communism.
Yeah.
Sounds like communism. Because Blanc, he was right about one thing. That liberalism, and he cribbed this from Burnham, that world communism faster than the Soviet Union could ever dream.
That's who I was thinking of when I said that.
Yeah. Oh, sorry. No, but it plays into the whole thing with Israel, right? Because I'll give you a good example before you go, Constantine. If all nations are treated equal in Africa, there are nations all the time that are being invaded, and their neighbors kill them, and they redact a whole bunch of people. But the Americans, as soon as this happened, right that night, they sent an aircraft carrier. I'm assuming Delta Force, the highest trained special forces in America that are trained specifically for hostage situations.
That's right.
And they sent an aircraft carrier.
You know who joined them? Greece. Greece announced today that they're of the USS Ford.
Yeah, the USS. Yeah. So the point being is that why is there such response for Israel? When let's go back to 1993. I was about 1 year old. Okay, Operation Gothic Serpent. It still took America, what was it, 6-7 months before like 2 million people starved to death before they went and did anything in Somalia. I mean, the point being is that we know why they get it. And I remember, and people, neocons and people in the American media, even libtards, they'll tell you straight out. They don't hide it. Well, America's Palestine, when it comes to Palestine and Israel, excuse me. I've been smoking American spirits. You know why Israel's different, right? Because it's the only democracy in the Middle East.
Yeah.
I remember being on the show with Lev, and this came up. And so I'm like, some other guest said, so Lev, you're telling me that the life of one Israeli is worth more than about 30 Palestinians. Well, the Israelis are democratic and life is more sacred to them. They all
talk like that. They do. They're crazy.
Look at what did Nimrata Haley say? Oh, sorry, I'm dead naming her. Nimrata. Nikki Haley. What did she say? Oh, get them all. Just get them all, BB.
Finish them. Finish them.
Let me do the Quake voice. Finish them.
That woman is crazy. She's so ambitious
Yeah,
Um,
100%.
She is the average
Sorry for
Indian
the rant.
diaspora
I'm
in
just saying, like,
America. That's what they're all like.
she's following her Indian brethren, hating the Palestinians and the Arabs. Yeah. No, but my point being,
we're your brothers.
yeah, yeah. I
No,
love
you're
how
not.
India Hindu Twitter is like Israel's strongest soldier right now. As soon as they're redacting Muslims. No, but I mean, the point being is that to rein it in, I'm getting excited. The point being is that the assertion that people are equal, that all nations are equal, the fantasy of the UN Millennium Goals and all that, where every nation's afforded an equal right to protection. I mean, this is nonsense. This is not how politics work. You don't have to be, you don't have to read, you don't have to read Mersheimer or William Kennan or whoever to realize that this was always nonsense, that there are always going to be power players in every region. And there's always, and what determines power players is not necessarily resource or geographic advantage. There are many imperceptible
Mhm.
sub-material or metamaterial reasons and spiritual reasons as to why certain nations are predicated worth over others. Now, in any other context, if Nimrata Haley or Ben Shapiro or Sebastian Gorka or even like libs, like Jonathan Greenblatt, like if they or who was another one? I think it was well, I'll get to Trudeau, but if it was anybody else calling for the redaction, the cleansing, the G-word iding of whole peoples. Not to say that like I'm going down a libtard point about like, oh, don't you know it's post-colonialism, blah, blah, blah. No, but I'm saying the material reality is that if it was any other people calling for any other group to in a geographic conflict, what would the libtard media do to Nimrata Haley? She would never run for president ever again. I mean, at the very least.
Can I ask you guys? You guys?
Yeah, sorry, I'm just ranting.
It's okay. It's okay. No, that was
No,
that was great.
that's why you're
but,
here.
No, but see, one last point I will make. One last
Go ahead. Go ahead.
Is that people in the E-right for this? My opinion is that I skew towards the Palestinians.
Yeah.
But there's a way to say that without devolving into like, well, it's post-colonialism, it's third worldism, blah blah blah.
Yeah.
But overwhelmingly, when it comes to our interests, both sides kind of don't have our interests in terms of Europeans.
They hate both of them. Both of them hate us
Western,
anyways. So like whatever.
Christians, they hate us. You know what happened? I'll tell you. This is God's divine providence right here. One of the oldest and I'm not Orthodox, I'm Catholic, but
oh no, I know what you're gonna say. That actually did not happen. You're talking about
I'll tell you what happened. They everywhere around what was the church called, the about the saint
yeah.
Oh yeah, I was saying like everything else besides the church was destroyed, so that's proof of God's providence and how, like even Mike Cernovich. I know a lot of people don't like Mike Cernovich, but he was saying him and Murder Me too. They were both posting about how American fundamentalist Christians, even not fundamentalists, even them too. Evangelical end times Protestant Christianity that is very, very affiliated with Christian Zionism, how they don't even code these people as Christians like themselves, and so therefore they sort of brush over the very real persecution of Christians in the Holy Land by the Israeli state. I mean, he tries to downplay it because he knows he's more American and he knows about these the Protestants but I think in a lot of these territories, I mean, we all seen the videos of them spitting on forth, and it's like the point is that there's a lot of blindness going into this, and I think the whole thing, the discourse that's being driven by a lot of these neocon types, like the Sebastian Gorkas of the world, it's I don't want to say too much because we're on YouTube, but you can pretty much infer that their relationship to the Christian faith and their reverence for it. I mean, this is sort of like an old issue in the in right-wing spheres, but it's like it really comes to this point where they're so and this is what Cernovich was saying. They're so emphatic they're so emphatic for this, but when it comes to like, you know, when Trump says to them, you know, what about America's borders? That goes out the window. Oh, one last point. I know a lot of people in like the, you know, the more like they criticize Trump for this, but for my opinion, you know, a lot of people are formulating in more or less Bibi sort of turned his back on Trump and the relationship went sour. And even though Trump
Bibi was the first to abandon him.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, even though Trump still does this
during the election.
Yeah. And Trump he'll still do like this performative like Israel worship stuff, but like on the whole, I think like, and it doesn't make sense if Bibi truly is like this right-wing monster in Israel. But at this, you know, but the reality is that, yeah, he was one of the first to betray Trump, and he was one of the first. And I think like, you know, people, they were saying like all of these journalists, they had these like absolutely mind-boggling art-hearted takes about like, don't you know who trained Hamas? Russia. You know who trained MAGA tribes? Russia. And it's like, Trump is directly responsible for Hamas. You know, did you know that Hamas really, they committed a J6? Like I've heard these takes from libtards.
Yeah.
Hey, do you know what the M
I love hearing
in
rage.
Hamas stands for?
MAGA.
So true.
MAGA? No, because you know why? Because there's a history there. Because in America, you know, ever since the Tea Party rally, during the Jon Stewart, like, you know, you had the rhetoric of like Al Qaeda, and I remember that there were these rallies where like, you know, MAGA people, they would use trucks, and there was this connection between ISIS and Hamas using Ford Helocs, I think that's what they're called, and people their pickup trucks to rally. And there was this connect, not between radical Islam and libtards like there was during the Bush years, but between radical Islam and the American chuds. There was like this connection that people like Matt Kreisman were.
And when they were going to Portland, Oregon.
Yeah, they were going to Portland. Yeah. Like Ezra Klein, you know, even Amy Goodman, and even, you know, I hate, this really pains me to the bottom of my heart, because when I was younger, I read all his books, but even like Chris Hedges was making this the stupid point. Like, it's like absolutely ridiculous. But But anyways, you were.
Yeah. So to the point you were about, you know, Gaza. Also stupid evangelical Christians and everything. So there, I found this hilarious and frankly offensive video, and it concerns a rabbi who has a podcast called Jerusalem Lights Podcast. On episode 176, you won't believe what Rabbi Chaim Reichman said to Jim Long. Jim Long is like, oh my God, he is the quintessential like white American evangelical. And so he says to him, you know, the thing with your people is that you worship one Jew. You should, all of us.
Keith would share this video. Yeah.
Oh, you saw that. You should worship all of us, because all of us are dying for your sins. It's it's so disgusting. And I just wanted to say that, because like when you talk about what's his name, Lev or whatever,
talking about Palestinians, how they're not worth
it's the same thing. I know somebody with a similar ethnic background who says the same thing, and like, dude, don't make me in the chat show the videos of that former IDF soldier talking about how the one crazy guy in our troop who he took all the kids and women and put them in a cage and then he just shot them. Or there was this time where we ran after these Palestinians with flamethrowers. Like, he's laughing about it. He's not making it up. Yeah. So like, please, you're as much of a savage as they are. Okay, like nobody believes you. you have a democracy where like people of a different ethnic and religious group can never become president or prime minister. You don't like. I'm pretty sure you want all the other democracies, particularly Western democracies, to not have any barriers on marriage. But you have one
Oh
in
yeah,
your country,
and you
right?
know,
No, but let me just say for you,
I
for
remember
YouTube
there's a
purposes,
Jewish friend of mine some years ago, and I remember we were walking, and I brought this up. I said, "What democracy? What are you talking about?" I said, "Would Russia still be a democracy if I don't know if ethnic Russian Christians were not allowed to marry Jews? I mean, that's how Israel functions." Yeah, well, it's bad, but they're working on it.
they're working on it. No, but let me just say, like, for YouTube purposes, I mean, not every single person of that ethnicity believes that. Not every single rabbi believes that, or Israeli.
Of course,
Of course, like, I know I just have to make this point. But at the same time, there are clips like that. And I do know that, like, in a lot of, like, quote unquote, like, J critical or like Wignat circles, like a lot of these clips get passed around, and some of them are probably out of context. We've all seen the Ignatieff clips and the Barbara Specter clip. Like, it's common Chan parlance, right? But at the same time, I mean, there is a lot going on, and I think that, without saying too much, I mean, there's obviously something there, and it's something that I think belies the Western mind. Like, I was talking about this with a friend recently, or it may have been my GF, where I said, like, Hamas, what they were doing, not to say, again, we don't support Hamas here, obviously, but we don't support, like, the slaughtering of people, innocent people. But, a lot of it, I think, was to break the illusion that Israel has moved beyond its history as a warring camp and as a nation that isn't necessarily like, the typical, like, decadent Western nation, that it always has sort of awareness of its own military history and so forth in its creation. I think Hamas was trying to, in a way, disturb the sort of wavelength of people, especially people that live in Tel Aviv, that they are, like, just like every other post-historical, peaceful, consumerist Western society. That, in fact, no, these warring relationships and these ethnic hatreds are still real, and that modern Israel is not exempt from its own history. I think that's probably the spectacle of them with hang gliders and gunning down civilians. Like, that's something that a lot of Israeli millennials and Zoomers, they don't have an awareness of. I mean, maybe in 2014, but I mean, still a lot of younger people in Israel, they imagine if you were in that situation. You know what I mean? It would disturb the perception of you being a post history implies post military conflict as well. So in a way, I think Hamas, they calculated that if they were to break the awareness of the Israeli citizenship of that sort of perception that they're like just every other Western nation, then that, I mean, you could say, oh, well, won't that awaken the Israeli? I mean, it will potentially, but I think it's probably, we're sinking you into the history that we have, and you're not going to escape it by having these pretensions that, we're just like a Western country. Because Israel's not just like a Western country. And Western countries, in fact, are not like these, and the thing is, like, I'm not pro-democracy. I think democracy is a terrible system. But like you were saying, Goran, like, I mean, do we have democracy in this country? I mean, in the country I stand in right now, people have their bank accounts frozen for supporting a peaceful protest. You know what I mean? So it's don't give me this bullshit about, like, oh, well, we're not like those people. Like, we don't kill people indiscriminately. Yeah, we kind of do. And I know, like, these are, like, leftist, like, Oliver Stone, Amy Goodman talking points, but there is something to be said about the military involvement of the West and the rest of the world, of the fact that even in our country, there are citizens, right? And yeah, that's just the reality of it. I mean, you have to, like, really have a sobering look at yourself before you can have these fantastical pretensions to, we live in a democracy and those people are cave people, and therefore, and you know what? Yeah, they are cave people. Oh, some of them, right? The Hamas soldiers that are gunning down civilians, they're pretty much like, both sides I don't shed any tears for when it comes to it. But when and the Israelis do when it comes to like restricting them and, imposing restrictions on water and food and so forth, and then actually bombing them. Right? Because, bombing someone is more ethical than just, going and shooting them in the face, apparently. So that's what I mean. Like, if you are a right winger in the West, you probably shouldn't be like driving towards the need to have a hot take or to pick a side or to embrace, there is a way to say that the Palestinians are hard done by without devolving into like holy libtardism, where you're going out in the streets of Mississauga or New York City and there's a way to do that.
I'm really glad you brought that up
posting,
because this is something that happens time again, where right wingers in the West are afraid to take their own side, and whenever there's some sort of conflict, they need to hide behind a proxy. Either, based Israeli, look what they're doing to like their violent like savage enemies, or based Palestinians, look at what they're doing to the international J, whatever. But
they can't control their own country, but the Israelis can. We can't, this is what the normie sadism of the Republican Party, of Nimrata Haley and Sebastian Gorka and Ben Shapiro, like, you hit the nail on the head, and this is what Cernovich and Martyrmaid were saying. They can't G-word-eyed their enemies domestically, but they can have their cocked Israel that can do it for them. Like, I mean, at least beyond, what is similar? It's like IPOC people and indigenous people, when they have the revolution. See that one take by that one woman, the lit professor, who said, if indigenous people wanted to rise up and redact my whole family, I'd probably hide, but I let them do it. You saw the take, right?
Yeah, and what did you think decolonization meant? Essays? Like that one, too?
Yeah, that one, too. Yeah. Everybody in the West, in a post-historical state, they have to externalize their own sadism and ethnic cleansing to quote-unquote based minorities on the other side of the world. The political left, though, in North America, what you mean black people and indigenous people and other, sacred progressive stack people are going to do the job of the white liberal for them. And they're going to go full-on Haitian revolution in America. When it comes to neocons, based Bibi Netanyahu doing some ethnic cleansing in Gaza. Like, this is what I mean by politics and hypermodernity, is that people are so fundamentally confused about their ideological priors. And you know what? I'm gonna say something very unpopular on the E-right.
Do it.
But a lot of people on the E-right probably grew up with neocon priors. They probably were reading, in Canada, they're reading the National Post. They're probably watching Rebel News. They probably were listening to mainstream Fox News talking points, because they all come from the suburbs. I come from the suburb, and you probably were consuming conservatard, meaning neocon media back in the 2000s. And now as soon as the opportunity presents itself, you still have that unconscious pull towards that worldview by saying, I guess the Israelis are based. Not saying that all right-wingers are like that, right? Because there's all this stupid debate whether, is Hamas the real Bronze Age mind? Try to get it back for that, whatever, who cares? The point being is that a lot of people on the political right are like, I guess the Israelis are civilized, and, I guess they're like, it's like what we want to do, right? Like, it's because you people, like I'm one of you, that grew up in a middle-class environment. I read the National Post. I watched the Michael Corrin show, the most philo-Semitic man ever. By the way, he became a libtard, and he's still, anyways. The point being is that I recognize that a lot of us have neocon 2000s conservatism priors. And when this conflict comes up, somehow it just tears the E-right apart, right? When the real position should be, these people do not serve our interests on either side. And maybe you could say that the Palestinians, there is a disparity there in terms of the affect and power and ability to inflict devastation on people. And you can say that without being, Alexander Dugin, let's embrace the third world, let's be total, Hawes, infra-Haas, third world, China, Russia. Well, I exclude Russia because Russia is still somewhat of a European country. But the point being is that, like, like the base third worldites, right? They're going to do like social conservatism for us.
It
Like,
does.
yeah, you can do that. God, I'm sorry. It takes I'm doing this, guys, because I promised Prude that we're going to have an Israel-Palestine free digital archipelago on Thursday. So that's why. Because no, but it's like people.
I sent you a collection of
headlines. Yeah, sir.
So I sent you a collection of headlines that I saw yesterday afternoon before we did the other show, just to give you an idea of, like, just what what some of the people in the tribe like to say about Western society and the double standards, right? And I caught a bit also of the academic agent stream, and he brought up, remember in 2015 when the Charlie Hebdo thing happened? Like there were a lot of crazy things that transpired, but particularly post-event, there were a lot of eye-opening statements, no less from Benjamin Netanyahu. He said two very crazy things. He said, it's becoming unsafe for Jews in Europe. Move to Israel. Okay, that was one of them. Two, it appears one of the Charlie Hebdo terrorists was actually treated by our medical staff because he was fighting against Assad, right? These are the same people who saying, Hamas are ISIS. It's like, you fucking funded Hamas or took care of them. Like shut the fuck up. Or like, I love the other one. This is our 9/11. It's like, really? We're the 5 dancing Israelis. So anyways,
I do not endorse that take, by the way, just for OPSEC purposes.
So, anyways, I sent Constantine
Yeah, I have it up.
a screen cap that I found yesterday. It might have been from Keith Woods. Like, I don't know who had it, but I downloaded it from Instagram. Sorry, not Instagram, Telegram. And these headlines perfectly encapsulate what we're trying to say, and how neither of these people, but one of these people has an enormous amount of power and is the one that is constantly lecturing us about how our societies ought to be. So if you want to put it up, Constantine.
Well, I'm glad we took this turn into this discussion, and yeah, I do have the headlines up, and I do think they get the point across. But as somebody in Europe, I could understand why they might be more prone to the anti-Islam side, seeing the more, let's just say,
of course.
the more brutal side of that. Whereas let's be honest, most Muslims in North America, I mean, look at the statistics. More of them support gay marriage than Christians do in America and Canada. Come on, like, these are the kind of Muslims.
Yeah.
No, I'm not saying that they should be here because they have all the right liberal values.
I mean, they're playing
the
politics
opposite,
too, right?
Yeah,
like,
of course.
Yeah, they're
of course.
they're Muslims that do protest the school agenda thing, but yeah.
But my point being is, Europe perceives a lot more of the quote-unquote low-class Muslims, the people who are more prone to crime and bad behavior for the sake of YouTube, we'll put it. Whereas, and of course there is Semitic influence in Europe, but in North America, especially in the U.S., it is I would say 10, if not 100-fold. So there's reasonable divides depending on which side you are on this, and while
you know what the average
go ahead.
Yeah. Oh, you know what the average Muslim in Canada looks like? I'll tell you. I went to school with them. A lot of them come because of the education Ponzi scheme.
Yeah.
And a lot of them are very rich. I knew this guy, this Muslim guy. I remember we were talking about Israel and Palestine. This is like back in 2011. And I go, so what's your background? He goes, oh, I'm from Saudi Arabia. My old man owns an oil company. I go, oh my God. Oh my God. He's like, yeah, he owns majority share in the Saudi oil company. I go, you came to Canada? You should have at least went to Harvard. Come on, you're coming to the sticks of Canada. They go, oh yeah, but like in Canada, it's easier and it's cheaper. And I go, oh my God. That's like, so yeah, the Muslims that we're getting in North America, I think, are quite different. I mean, yeah, you do still have like yeah, it's like in Europe, it's way different with the Islam thing. Yeah, I'm sorry, Constantine, I just had to point that out.
Yeah,
I had that funny interaction. In fact, he was pretty woke on the whole Israel-Palestine issue, if I recall. But,
For example, I feel a lot safer than Dearborn than I do in Detroit. Not that I'd want to live in Dearborn, don't get me wrong, but still.
Yeah. Another thing that they do, which is funny, we were in the cafeteria, and as soon as one sits on your table, it's like a whole gang of them come. And like, oh, this is my friend Geo. It's like they come like as soon as you sit down, it's like a whole group of them come. It's funny.
Travel and gaggles, as it were. But getting back to the point, and as we had addressed previous episode, that one hand washes the other here. We see the scheme. In Israel, it's about securing their existence, blah blah blah. You know the rest. In Europe and North America, it's about being these great humanitarians and accepting all of the world, so on and so forth. And people, it goes back to, once again, they feel the need to live vicariously through other groups, whether they be a lefty decolonization, whatever, or a right-wing ethno-nationalist. There is a flavor for everyone, so to speak, outside, because there's real identity in North America, and I would even say in Europe, has been suppressed. Once again, treading old ground here. But I'm glad you bring this up, because I think, especially in this conflict, this is something that needs to be said time and time again. We do not have a dog in this fight. You can talk about some objective things, like, for example, hey, it might be better if this group is disempowered versus that group. But ultimately, when it comes to this, we don't have a strong interest in seeing either one really win or lose in that regard, because no matter who wins, we lose. There's really no way around that. And I can tell you, if Israel does get a bloody nose from this, and Israel does take lasting damage from this, there's going to be more waves of people to Europe and North America.
Yes.
And likewise, if the Israelis do decide to take extreme measures on the question of Palestine and the Gaza Strip, you're going to end up with more people in Europe and North America. And also, on top of this, because of the shaking in confidence, you are going to see liberal Jews who live in these places like Tel Aviv go back and move in with their cousins in places like New York, London, L.A., etc.
Boca Raton.
Exactly.
Did you see how many thousands of Israelis?
Go ahead. I was just gonna
go ahead.
I was going to make a cheap joke, and I guess, but if they're going to Boca Raton, they're going to move in with their Bobby and Zadie. That very important distinction to be made there. But as you were saying, on a much more serious note,
the video of all kinds of prominent people. I have to say, Bennett, the former prime minister, he actually went and met with the troops. But another former prime minister before who and Bennett, he was in the airport, and so was Russian Jewish oligarch Chubais. Chubais, yeah.
Is he going back?
I don't know. He's either going to go to England or he's going to go to Russia, but I don't know.
What a bastard.
Yeah.
Like, what a but he's kind of funny. You can't really hate him. Well, yeah, you can hate him a lot, but like, he is kind of funny though. He's a funny character. He's a funny little guy.
Also, there was a Russian woman that worked for, I don't know if she worked for RT or she worked for I just don't recall who, but she is eligible now for recruitment. Yeah. Editor of one of the largest Russian opposition channels here, Ksenia Sobchak, is like, I'm not kidding you. The New York Times actually had an article of like Russian Jews who left when the general mobilization was called, and they went to Israel like thinking, and they're like, I'm terrified. Drafted
You know what's funny? I saw that Ragnar Tom Hartman like basically calling for the death of. Didn't you like have a show on Russia Today where like the whole network talked like with Abby Martin, like where you talk not how like Palestine's like wholesome Chungus Gladio nationalism, like it's
I think
it's
Putin also
funny,
joked
like,
about you can always go somewhere where you'll feel safe, like South Korea and Taiwan.
yeah. Oh my god. There's no, but like it's funny how like a former Russia Today guy is like now like a full on like a shill for a particular nation. It's very funny. Because libtards, like here's the thing, like I saw NAFO accounts were like posting like Israeli NAFOs. Did you see Israeli doggos, fellas? Did you see this?
No,
I
I
did,
mean, I believe they're there, but
I think there's something much more important in terms of Twitter posting from the NATO and I guess you could say loosely NAFO crowd is the fact that Gunther has called for ex-Israel. Okay, we need to send the F-15s to Ukraine.
is this real?
Yeah. Gunther was saying, "Oh, maybe you should have
He's
thought twice
crazy.
about not supporting Ukraine because look what's happening."
One of my favorite tweets was from Landshark. He said, Gunther Falinger changing his avatar to a NAFO doggo and calling for the end of Israel in the same day is sort of like Job testing God, but it's his right-wing followers. God testing Job, but it's his right. It's like they're testing the test of faith to right-wing followers.
Hashtag ex-Israel. I'm all behind it. Okay, I will
crossovers.
Yeah, I will. Look, I'll sign on to the Ukrainian cause. Bold move, but if that's the prize at the end of this tunnel, then I think it might be. No, never.
You know
no.
who's got a You know who's got a 12D, like that chess game they were playing in Farscape, where Rigel was like tricking that one commander. You know who's playing 12D Rigelian chess?
Who's that?
The hairdo. Big Spence. He's retweeting pro Gaza invasion Israel posts. I'm not joking. Look at his timeline. He's on board with Bibi and the invasion of Gaza.
Well, don't you remember when Spencer called himself a white Zionist back in like 2018, 2017, whatever that was? He was on some of his Israeli news outlet. Yeah, I'm something of a white Zionist.
Oh my god. And then like people were trying to say that like the ethno state is modeled Israel but for white people. That was big in 2017. That was like, and reading Dugan and like yeah. Oh my god, Spencer. So Spencer, he's clearly like thinking 12D chess ahead. Who knows?
Oh yeah.
Because think of it, if here's I have a conspiracy. This is totally crazy.
Go on.
But I said this in Semiagog's chat last night with Charlemagne. I said that now say 5D chess in terms of like far right anti-Semitism is to support the color revolution, like the libtards in Tel Aviv and Israel, to support them, but to also support dragged into a Vietnam style conflict where Bibi and the Likud gets a bloody nose, because then Bibi will be weakened. The libtards will take over. Decline will accelerate. Ergo, 5, 6
anti-Semitic. Back. Remember, tranny, Sarah, something Cirillo, yeah. From her job in September, he was visiting New York.
And then Ottawa. Yeah.
But you know who retweeted? Richard Spencer.
That was amazing.
Hey, sounds like his type.
Oh my god. No, but proliferationism.
He's playing chess. We're all playing checkers.
I know there's like a totally schizo libtards in Tel Aviv. You would go out there with Gunther Fellinger and Cirillo, and you have a pride parade in the middle of Tel Aviv.
Well, I mean, they already had them for years.
I know. So. Yeah. No, but you'd have a pride parade in Jerusalem now. That's how you do it. That's how you. If you were serious anti-Semitism, I shouldn't say this on air, but I'm just saying it is curious how, like, Richard Spencer supporting his plan. What is his end game? What is his
I don't know. Not going to jail.
Oh my god.
I don't know if he has a.
You know what's funny is that Cirillo person, like, has the, like, I mean, they all have a body of a man, but like he's, you know, built like a linebacker, but with those like very angular, rigid tit job.
Oh.
Did you notice this?
Like, unfortunately, yes.
It's like weird and off-putting, and like that straight like wig hair, like it's really like the cadence is that of a theater.
Yeah, absolutely.
I can't, like, this is what, like, it's true with T777. Like, the regime, like, they'll send like hideous clowns like Hillary Clinton to like demoralize the opposition in other nations. It's like Cirillo is like the clown of God they send out.
I can just imagine Cirillo in a POW camp shaking down Russian POWs and shouting "It's ma'am" at them.
Yeah. Yeah, Cirillo's like committing war crimes and, like, you know, torturing Russian prisoners. Like, that's basically what Cirillo, like, that's basically what this person was saying on those clips, right? Like, we're gonna hunt down all Russian disinformation people, and, like, you know, he probably bribed like some officer to, like, you know, go around or two with their friend Gonzalo Lira. Like, I could imagine this happening, you know. It's
actually,
like,
you know what was funny is the Americans did a statement about why they wanted it because of, they didn't mention his name, Gonzalo Lira, but they mentioned because of the attacks and by Cirillo on they said an American who is contained in Ukraine, which
that's Gonzalo, 100%.
That's him, right?
You sweeps, I remember.
Yeah.
Yeah, I remember this.
I still remember Gonzalo Lira tweet. he posted these pictures of Jewish women. Oh my god. Let me tell you, they're not like the TikTok IDF girls.
No, because they're all Russian and Ukrainian models who are contracted out for that stuff. That's
they're all like
an absolutely crazy guy, man. He went too far, and
he went too far. there were like Oscar like go to New York to find them. You know.
Oh no!
Come on, don't tell me you haven't thought about this.
Stop lying, Gio.
Oy vey.
Oh, come on, guys. You can't be that. What about that chicken farscape? I think she was an Ashkenazi.
I don't know, to be honest.
What about Elaine Bennis?
Who's that?
You know, from Seinfeld.
From Seinfeld? She's cute.
Oh, the one the A's obsessed with, the half Irish, half Ashkenazi. What's her name? Connolly. Jennifer Connolly. Come on, guys. You can't. Don't do this.
You're not.
Performative Wignat stuff.
Well, I mean,
you're not going to get me past those consanguinity rates. I'm sorry.
Just let me finish. There is.
Yeah. Sorry.
There is some kind of a thing where you combine Ashkenazi, like.
Yeah.
Okay. Michael Landon.
Yes.
And.
One Aryan Indo-European DNA. Did you know that?
Okay.
Yeah, apparently, yeah. I'm gonna make a joke now that we're talking about women. I was gonna make a joke that every time I come on the show, we start talking about e-girls, and we were going to call it.
Mm.
I'm gonna change the name of the horror report.
Did you guys want to speculate?
Oh, about Russia?
Just for a change of subject, how and why Hamas attack was so successful? Because this is an incredibly large attack, which means that it had to be very well organized, right? How did they pull it off? You guys, where they take out the machine guns, drones,
Yeah.
paragliders, so I've seen 3 different videos. One is an Israeli Jewish woman who has a caller who says, "Look, I worked for IDF intelligence." I don't know if that means Shin Bet or not, but he said this breach is just phenomenal. Like it could not have happened, right? And then there were stories that 60 to 80%, because of course weeks before the Israelis were provoking them by going to the inside the Al-Aqsa Mosque, and like they in particular is notorious for this, to go in their holy places,
Yeah.
by into them. Well, I mean, he
Well,
doesn't
you can
personally
hate
do it, but
Islam, what they're doing to Europe, but that's a disgusting move. Come on, like that's
yeah. So he's provoking them, and it's intentional, right? He knows their honor depends on it, right? If they don't do something, then they become part of that Borg, which is modernity.
yeah.
And then they'll become rich, because then Gaza City will become like this new it's so stupid, but
So yeah.
as if. But anyhow, so they were understaffed. Now I saw 2 other videos where a woman said, I manned those cameras, and if a cricket, I remember one night I'd fallen asleep and a cricket made the alarm go off, and I immediately woke up. Another guy I just saw today saying, I know when there was a breach, we had 100 cars in an hour there. Each car had 3-4 guys in it. To how could this happen? There's no way this didn't. There's no way this happened without someone's intentionality, right? So now the debate is: would Bibi have done this to save his political career, or like I said, there was an article in the Cradle. Iranian sources say that certain elements within the IDF that are unhappy helped them sneak through or did something to the system. So anyway, I thought that was interesting, because I think there's kind of evidence for all of them, right? Would Bibi be so pragmatic that he would do this? Because I do tend to think that he is really very much an Israel firster, and he doesn't get involved in Europe should be multicultural even more than it is. Like he doesn't.
No,
That's
he
one of the
doesn't
reasons
care.
that was one of the reasons why he was palatable to MAGA and the Orban crowd way back in 2016 and 17. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So anyways, what do you guys think? My brother thinks he tends to think that that something was compromised. They could not all have fallen. The reaction itself took over 6 hours.
Yeah.
Before Bibi addressed anybody in public. But one of the things that this Cradle article mentions, right, yesterday night I mentioned the names of the senior officers that were killed, and they were killed on the first day, uh, including a guy named Jonathan Steinberg, who is their oldest, 42 years old, but a lot of other leaders. There was an elite squad of 5 that was like part of some elite intelligence, like recon brigade that was destroyed. Another guy was Roy Levy. Another officer went by the name of Sahar. It starts with an M, his last name. In any case, right? And they've captured some of them. So they decapitated a lot of the generals right away that they captured. Rumor has it that they killed them and their families once they got a hold of them, right? So I don't know. What's your take on this?
Well, I know that I know that like Hezbollah has people within the IDF. That's for sure. Sleeper cells that are people that at least are in the know. But I know that like Mercois was this was a massive intelligence failure precipitated by attention drawn away from both in Mossad and within Washington in Langley, that all of their attention, they were hyper focused on Ukraine. And
I don't buy that at all.
Yeah, I don't buy it either. It's so massive of a failure. Like from what I've seen, the footage is that there were IDF troops that were sort of skeleton crew that got domed immediately,
yes,
along with civilians. And did they? So you're telling me that head general they managed to capture? Did they redact him? The guy that looked like Jerry?
Oh, they killed him right away. But there are other generals.
Oh, wow.
In total, there are 9 officers, including amongst them are generals and colonels.
This smacks of old school extrajudicial killing, targeted assassination.
Hamas outdid the Mossad. I mean, really.
Yeah. This is crazy.
They did more in 48 hours than the Mossad has done like in 20 years.
Yeah.
Right.
Wow.
The other thing that I said it on last night's show is Hamas set up a mock village settlement inside the Gaza Strip to practice.
Man.
Right now, you're telling me nobody knows a village where these guys are like tumbling around with AK-47s, shooting up mannequins and stuff, cutouts and whatnot. Like Egypt warned Israel that something like this was going to happen. And then, some officers also warned, but America itself said today nothing to indicate that something the like of which that happened on October 7th would happen. Egypt knew, America didn't. Come on. Don't buy it. We may never know, but I don't buy this.
Of course.
He was distracted.
Like one Islamic Langley, one Islamic expert didn't know what was going to happen. Like, come on. How big is Gaza, really? Like, I mean, aren't there like all their communications are basically policed? Yeah. You know what I mean? Like, it's
think of it. Like you talked about, maybe Hamas or Hezbollah has infiltrated Israeli intelligence. Well, yeah, Hamas has definitely been infiltrated, right? Yeah. Like the PLO was infiltrated. Why wouldn't Hamas
even before Arafat, the PLO was infiltrated.
Yeah, so.
Yeah. That's ancient history. My old man remembers seeing that on television back in the day with Yasser Arafat. But Constantine, what is your take on this?
Well, I will say first and foremost, a detail that people have overlooked about this is that Hamas forces have been training with Hezbollah for several years now. And Hezbollah has cut their teeth in both the Lebanese and Syrian civil wars just over the course of the past 30 years. So they are, insofar as irregular fighting forces go, they're probably the best you can get. And that's also looking at the 2006 skirmish with Israel in southern Lebanon. So there is that as well. We've had a series of skirmishes from about 2014 onwards between Hamas and the IDF proper in Israel, 2014, 2018. These have been happening, 2021 also. These have been happening sporadically. So, in terms of actual experience, in terms of actually having a taste for combat, they, once again, they've certainly had much more of a taste and have much more experience going into this. This isn't their first time around. This isn't some aimless attack that they thought we're just going to push in, set off some sort of domino effect, and maybe the Arab and Muslim world will support us. No, this was far more calculated. And I would
Yeah.
say it was mostly Israeli negligence, and I don't think it's because they were maniacally focused on Ukraine both in Tel Aviv and in Washington. I don't think that is an adequate explanation. That may be part of it, but it doesn't tell the whole story. The question of
I
Egypt,
think that Durant has to say that to not appear crude, though. I think that's probably why.
well, of course,
Yeah,
but
there's that. They don't want to be part of the kook crowd.
of course, and
This is why we'll never invite them to the show.
But also in terms of the Egyptian intelligence,
Ask you,
that is probably the biggest eyebrow raiser. Now, the only thing I can imagine why the Egyptian intelligence would have been discarded is that, I mean, clearly there's going to be a high level of distrust between Israel and Egypt, even while there has been a quote-unquote peace between the two for several decades now. And as we were alluding to earlier with the Israeli paranoia, when it comes to that, all of a sudden they get an intelligence report from Egypt about Hamas maybe planning something. Judging by the logic of the IDF, the Mossad, just the administration, Israel in general, you could very easily see them looking at that and taking the opposite message from it because of where it came from. In which case, they may have diverted forces. They may have thought, oh, maybe something's going to happen towards the Syrian-Lebanese border. Once again, nothing too concrete, just speculation.
They
here.
thought something would happen in Jenin or Hebron.
Yes,
that's one of the things
well
that they've said.
With the West
I mean,
Bank,
is that true or not? I don't know, but that's what they're saying.
Yeah, yes, and certainly, and I actually think at this point, I'm not going to say this is like hard fact because I certainly don't have the evidence to back it up. That yeah, an intelligence report coming from Egypt may have triggered the Israeli paranoia and made them do the exact opposite of what they should have done, leaving this massive opening for Hamas to make their move.
Well, I was going to ask you, Constantine. I'm not that familiar with the IDF structure, but how did they manage to capture that many commanders of the IDF intelligence? Like, how did
they had to have intelligence? They had to have known. Look, they've started moving their troops. They're going over here. They're going to be in Hebron, Jenin, and Jerusalem. This would be an auspicious time.
Yeah.
Should we do it on the 6th on Yom Kippur? No. Putin's birthday is on the 6th, so let's wait for the 7th.
No, but like that's what I mean. The guy, the commander, what's his name? That looks like Jerry Seinfeld. He was in civilian clothing. He was like having a day off.
The breach in the intelligence is much bigger when you think about it.
But nobody's talking about this. Are people talking about this in the mainstream media, or is it?
No, they're not. It's almost like, oh, these Hamas guys, they're super soldiers. They just they just knew where they lived, and
they're also Nazis. Oh, some of them actually are Nazis. What am I talking about? Did you see that one picture with the guy with a no, but like that's what I mean. Like, are people not speculating? Like, this is a huge disaster. This kind of is like their 9/11. Like,
yeah.
Well, I mean, no, I shouldn't say it. There were other terrorist attacks back in the 70s and 80s that were, way brutaler. But like, this is really fucked. This is
Well, I mean,
this is bad.
the current death count for the Israelis is 1,000
Oh my
that
god.
that 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 they can speculate safely upon, right? But
That's
that
approaching
number
9/11 numbers. Yeah.
that that number will probably go up, and we don't know what the. I mean, the figures that I saw this morning and yesterday indicate that by a small margin, the Palestinians have lost less people. It's unprecedented. In 2021, it was something like, I don't know, 8 or 10 Israelis were killed, and something like 800 Palestinians were killed. Right? Like, I think that is also what is fueled this kind of, because they're destroying their buildings with JDAM missiles,
Yeah.
right? That have a jammer built to them, and they just fire 2 at the bottom of the building, and then the building just collapses on
I've
itself.
seen cluster bombs used as well.
Yes, and they started using white phosphorus today.
Oh
but
yeah, great. Everyone that played Spec Ops: The Line, you know what white phosphorus does to people, right?
yeah,
God, burn
yeah.
'em. That's what they. Yeah, exactly. Like it. Oh man, that's.
Like I don't know. Like, obviously the breach was there. They had to have been betrayed by somebody within their own ranks.
Yeah.
Right. I don't think it was just Bibi wasn't paying attention, and
They were too focused on Ukraine.
yeah, I don't think so. Also, like, the idea that, like, Israel doesn't have satellite imagery as good as America's, to see, like, Hamas train, like, the planning for this took over a year.
At least that. People are
At least
speculating
that.
even more than a year.
Like, think how many missiles that they launched 3,500 missiles the first day. They overwhelmed, like, back in
The Iron
2021
Dome.
in May, like, they made some successful hits. They hit, like, an ammo depot in somewhere around Tel Aviv. Okay, so some of the missiles got through. The kind of damage. Okay, I mean, there's nothing that the Palestinians have done in terms of damage that remotely even approaches to the devastation that was caused in the Gaza Strip, but it is more damage than I've ever seen, right? And they've even developed their own air defense system, which I don't think is very, very sophisticated right now. But the difference between now and 2021 is they didn't have that in 2021, right?
Yeah.
So they're obviously developing very quickly. How are they doing this? Where are they getting the supplies? Like, that means they have
Corrupt Ukrainian generals. Which is the most.
That's part of it, but it can't explain everything.
Yeah, true.
Actually, speaking to that, Zelensky was in Romania today to meet with what's his name?
Kashuda.
Oh God! With what's the president's name is Johann something.
Klaus Johannes.
Anyhow, yes, Klaus Johannes, and
yeah,
he was denied.
Surprisingly German name for Romanian prime minister.
Yeah, Emil Kosman is very happy with that. Emil Kosman approves.
So true.
But the interesting thing is,
why shouldn't the Germans?
Zelensky wanted to address their parliament, but was denied. So he didn't get a chance to address the Romanian parliament, and on his flight home, he basically said that Russia's organized all of this.
God.
Russia's responsible. Anyways, I love the whole Putler, incredible, super genius.
He really is kind of like
the man with autism destroying the West.
Yeah, he kind of is like Dr. Evil, No, but it's funny because Ukraine, from the very beginning, even in 2014, I mean, Gordon, you remember this. They always had problems with weapons being shipped off to third world shitholes to blow other people up. I mean, they've always had this corruption in the Ukrainian military, Like, I mean, it's no surprise. I mean, is it the sole factor? I mean, no, but I mean, there were, like, from what I saw, there were videos I saw on Telegram where the IDF were seizing. I mean, of course, the videos of like pissing on and like beating up the dead bodies of the insurgents. So as per usual, as per IDF standard. But I saw videos where they were taking weaponry, and a lot of them did have American serial numbers on them, or so it was claimed.
Yeah,
So,
yeah, yeah.
I
They're
mean,
getting them from multiple sources,
yeah,
and
of
the route
course.
isn't always direct.
Yeah. Well, because the Middle East, as you know, is like littered with stockpiles of American weaponry. So
Yeah.
they could get it from anywhere. There were, I would imagine there's probably like kits they were using from like fucking from like Operation Enduring Freedom, like the early 2000s, so yeah. For those of you gunheads out, probably, rare tracking of American armaments throughout the world to see what ethnic cleansing they're participated in. But, I mean, that's how it works in the empire.
Yeah.
Nothing but
Anyway,
a well-oiled machine. Nothing but the finest management. It happens time again. There's really no words for it. But one thing I actually did want to bring up that I'm not going to outright co-sign right now, but I do think it does touch on some things that we have been covering on the show for the past several months, past couple years actually. And while you can't attribute this particular instant to it, I do think it might be part of a broader overarching trend of the Jewish people losing faith in the state of Israel in favor
yeah,
of casting their lot in with the American empire. That's why you saw the airports in Israel full of prominent figures looking to go to places like the UK, the US, Western Europe, etc., etc., etc. And like I said, while I don't think you can attribute this exact incident to it, the fact that you've had so many officers be assassinated or captured, that you had this far of an incursion, that you have the protest against Netanyahu as it is, and like I said, actually the leaving of several prominent people on top of other tens, if not hundreds of thousands of people at the airport trying to get out of Israel, I do think it is indicative of a larger trend where, especially the younger generations in Israel, as well as people who are more concerned about their bottom line than any sort of higher ideal, such as a Zionist project, as it were. I mean, higher ideal in so far as I think beyond their own wants and needs. But I do think that faith in the Zionist project is on a decline, and that this will actually put it into an even further decline, and that it arguably could have been part of a series of events that we've seen over the past few years. I would say since around the mid 2000s, that shows simply the fervor for Israel, the fervor for the Jewish state, is simply not what it was even just 10 or 20 years ago.
Mm.
yeah,
And I do wonder, because I do think that this is going to be a make or break moment, because what you're going to get is, yes, you're going to get the liberal Israeli Jews who are going to try to leave the country. The ones with the means will leave the country, which will push the country further and further towards right wing Zionism, towards further ethno and religious nationalism on the part of the Israelis, which will only inflame this current situation, because the hardliners will have more representation, the hardliners will have more power, the hardliners will have less of a check when it comes to the cosmopolitan classes in Tel Aviv. In which case, it's going to be a critical juncture for the Israeli state when it comes to, are they going to pursue this project to its logical end, or is steam just going to run out of it? Because I do imagine, well, not imagine, but I do speculate that as time goes on, if these outcomes are to happen, if we're looking at this, say, 2 to 5 years down the road, just to give a rough time frame, as you do get these people who leave Israel, these cosmopolitans in Tel Aviv, as it were, the class of people I'm talking about, and the right wing and the hardliners become more emboldened, the diaspora is going to become even more disillusioned with Israel. I mean, you look at polls every year, the diaspora
Oh
support
yeah.
for Israel is down, support for Israel is down, and that is a consistent downward trend. And if we are to look at what seems to be developing right now, that's going to be even a sharper downturn when it comes to the diaspora opinion on Israel. In which case, there's always going to be some baseline support, even among the most liberal of diaspora. That it's just baked into the cake. But is it going to get to the point where the unquestionable
Israelis
status?
in the West are going to set up en masse and go to Israel and join the IDF. You
um,
think no?
no. But I think it's getting to the point where we're returning to something that we saw pre 9/11, where the unquestionable status of Israel it has waned, and that while there will be pro-Israel sentiment, while there will be support for the Israeli state, it's going to be much like it was during the Cold War, because, I mean, of course, we are in a new Cold War. I think it's pretty undeniable, where they will bail them out if the situation gets that bad, but their wants, the wants of the Israeli state, are going to be sidelined in favor of the greater American empire, specifically because of the opinions of the diaspora.
Oh yeah, definitely. I mean, I think like you know, ethnically Jewish people in America, I think that they're going through the same in a same like I know the meme is like ordeal of civility, but they're going through like the same of all of us gone through. I mean, me and Constantine are Italian. Goran, you're Macedonian, Eastern European. So in a way, it's like as time goes on, as you become more abstracted in like the liquid modernity machine of the West, you don't have those same feelings or sentiments for the homeland anymore. The way that your parents did, the way that your grandparents even did. So I think like Israelis and like the diaspora here in North America, like you were saying, Constantine, like that rift will become increased as their culture becomes more divergent of their ideology in Israel becomes more abstract and as the secular diaspora here in the West sees that as sort of like not a real project anymore, especially consumers of the contingent. Yeah, they're I mean same you could say that about us Catholics, Mediterranean Catholics. You could say that I don't know how it's like with Eastern Europeans that have been here in the West for a long time, but it's the same process ultimately. But I had a few thoughts about Russia, but what do you think about that, Gordon? Do you think that I mean, Israel faces huge demographic problems. I mean, there was this even militarily. There was this thread by Catgirl Kulak, who did this about how Israeli military supremacy, the IDF, isn't as what it used to be. And I'm thinking like demographically, they're also not as what they used to be, right? Like they have that, we all know about the problem with like, the Orthodox, the Hasidims not being, drafted into military service. But yeah,
And on
it's
top
like,
of that, just what a burden
yeah,
they are on the state and civil society in
yeah,
general. Like you see,
exactly.
well,
And
people are making the joke that Israel is going to be
yeah,
110 with the way that the Hasidics interact with just broader society.
what's funny? Some of them are anti-Zionist too. Did you know this?
Oh yeah, because they believe the state of Israel
Who?
was established under the wrong circumstances, and
Like
the
secular
Hasidics, yeah.
pretenses, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, not all Hasidic. There is a sect of Hasidics that
Yeah.
believe that real Zionism will come with the Messiah. That I mean,
Yeah.
as Christians, we believe the Messiah already came, but like they believe that the secular state of Israel is sort of like a blasphemy against the real project of the Messiah. Which I mean, who knows, right? That's for them to decide. But it's funny though because yeah, they have these demographic problems, but it made me think of if they did get pulled into a multi-Arab country Vietnam style engagement. I mean, the conspiracy theory that maybe Bibi was the one that did this Likud to like shore up their power so they could like go for like Intifada #3. I mean,
I think
my point being is that
in
there's massive
Israel very bad press, but
Yeah.
people still believe because in a war, you can't go. I mean, it would be suicidal for a country during a war to depose its leader.
Yeah,
You know,
100%.
right? But as soon as the war is over, he's finished,
Oh yeah,
right? And I think he knows that,
kind of
which
like
makes
Zelensky.
it. I mean, he's been in this game. He's been prime minister a few times,
Yeah,
and I think he understands that. I don't. That's why I kind of don't think he was behind this.
no, no.
The only way he could be behind this is he says, okay, this is the best chance we're going to get in 20 years. Get rid of the Palestinians and at the same time to draw America into a war with Iran.
Yeah,
If it doesn't happen, like I can see him. I mean, it's speculation. Maybe that's a possibility. I mean, I don't know the man, right? I'm just saying, if we say that he's doing this for political reasons, then he has to know as soon as his political career is finished,
right.
right? He has a court case hanging over him for corruption. His wife is an accomplice, and so on, right? It's not a good place. He has to know that, right? Like, Churchill after the war he was not popular, but during the war, right?
Yeah,
I just, I'll never know for sure, right? But I'm just saying there was a breach in intelligence, and it was somewhere along the chain of command, somebody intentionally ignored it, and that person has to be also cognizant of the people who were leaking information, right? I'm not, taking away from the argument that Hamas and Hezbollah, although they fought each other in Syria, they have managed to put their grievances aside. Iran, even though it's Shia, has always supported Palestine.
yeah.
Always. That's why they always called America Satan Dog America.
Mark Bar America.
Satan Dog America. It's hilarious in the English translation. Anyways, so I always, again, I don't know for sure, but I tend to think he didn't orchestrate this. Maybe as time goes on, I might change my mind, but at the moment, no. I will say this: you guys remember the raids into the Belgorod region of southern Russia on the border with
Yes.
Ukraine? Okay, remember that RDK group, the Freedom Russia group or whatever.
Oh yeah,
Remember
the
Dennis
groups are failing or approved.
Dennis Kapustin? Okay, so Dennis Kapustin. He moved to Germany like when he was very young, and he did it by basically saying that he was Jewish. I love it. This is like a right-wing, so-called neo-Nazi group, right? And you can't get citizenship, like you can't move under the pretense of being Jewish to Germany unless you have one parent or one grandparent minimum who is Jewish, that you don't profess any other faith but Judaism, right? And that the Jewish community can take you in, right? Which would be just a letter. Anyways, Dennis is leaving Ukraine because Israel is in danger. I just thought that was hilarious.
No, but it's true. It's a chaos play for Bibi. I mean, unless he thought like that it was like the right time and America's ready to get into an apocalyptic war with Iran. I mean, I don't know. He must have known that there's a lot of neocons that are caught between like we have to destroy Russia at all costs, we have to destroy China at all costs, and now we have to defend Israel at all costs. So I don't know, between the three of those groups in Washington, I don't know. I mean, I think that's too much of a play. I mean, in a way, it reminds me of a year ago when Peter Nemitz came on my show, and he said that the reason that Putin's doing this in part, in terms of the invasion of Ukraine, is that Russia demographically, in terms of their young men, is at a time where they could do this, and maybe in 20 years
Yes,
they
I've heard
can't.
that.
Yeah.
Yes,
And so
yes.
I think that when it comes to Israel, if it was in fact, if there was definitive proof that Bibi was the one that orchestrated this, it's because there's enough IDF soldiers of young men to fill in the ranks, the 300,000 reserve, because they have to factor in Hezbollah, Syria.
I mean, they
even
totally
Egypt.
outnumber them.
Oh
like,
yeah.
In the Gaza Strip, they completely outnumber the forces of Hamas.
Yes,
But
100%.
if you say, well, there's 2.53 million people that are there, yeah, but they don't have guns.
There's
And
a lot of women and children.
Hamas, and there's a lot of women and children. The average age is 17 or 18.
Yeah.
And they are overwhelmed with like need for medical supplies. Like there are a lot of people who are injured that might have survived that are going to die.
Yeah.
Medical facilities have been destroyed. So like, I mean, Hamas cannot provide guns for 3 million people, right?
No.
Or even 1 million people.
It's not like Iraq when the Americans entered Iraq, where the whole country was flooded with munitions. It's not the case. No.
Yeah.
And like the fact, like, I mean, if you factor in Hezbollah and Syria and other players in the region, and all Islamists basically filtering into the area to fight Israel, I mean, that'd be different, obviously. But even still, I mean, I think like in a protracted urban warfare where artillery would be less effective by definition, Israel has a lot of problems militarily, but they won't have as many problems as perhaps in Bibi or whoever's done this. In their mind, they won't have as many problems as, say, 10, 20 years down the road, where they will face a full-blown demographic crisis. So, I think, like, now, if it's the forces in Jerusalem that are against, in the Knesset, that are against Netanyahu and Likud, to do this, to drag him into a war, to make him a fool.
Yes, I've heard of that theory too.
Yeah,
I've heard that the liberals want this to muddy him, to make
that
him
right-wing Zionism won't be as masculine and won't be as effective as people think it is. Yeah, that's the theory.
Yeah. Because that's what they look like. They look. I mean, yes, they've gained back virtually. See, there's conflicting reports about this, about how many villages have been retaken.
Yeah.
It seems that there's always cells that the sun goes down and fighting reemerges in these places, or Hamas still has a few rockets. In any case, not to diverge too much. I mean, it looks really bad. Like, the much taunted Iron Dome. Zelensky isn't going to ask for it. Because I mean, these missiles are nothing compared to like what Russia has.
Yeah, 100%. No, that's another thing about the Iron Dome. Did you know that in the 70s and 80s, they said that the Iron Dome was almost near like 90% effectiveness?
Yeah.
And that turned out to be total bullshit, that it was closer to 40% effectiveness. Like, it's, I mean, come on. It's like every missile defense system is always, now, granted, the technology that Israel has nowadays is way better, but no system is impervious. Especially if you have like very cheap water level rockets being thrown at huge quantities. You saw those videos over Tel Aviv recently where the Iron Dome was putting on a little light show. Did you see those videos?
Yeah. Like they get a lot of them. Like to me, to my eyes, anecdotally, they seem to get most of them.
Yeah.
But when you look at the damage in towns like Ascalon, Serdot,
in the periphery,
even Tel Aviv, like Tel Aviv airport was hit by a missile, like on the outskirts, but people were terrified, right? Lod airport was hit, right? So, I mean, obviously the system got overly saturated, and what's interesting is, as the days have gone on, it's actually underperformed even more. But early on, maybe it was working more optimally, but again, the saturation of missiles flying in was so huge that it couldn't cope with it. And that's how you would do it, right? You would need even more air defense systems to deal with the saturation problem, right?
Yeah.
And you would need some for missiles that are that fly at lower altitude, higher altitude, where they're being fired at is 50 rather than 100 kilometers. Like, it would have to be multi-layered.
Yeah. And keep in mind that the Iron Dome is notoriously bad with drones now. Like, drones are almost impossible to shoot down at that level. Yeah. And wasting all that money and munitions to shoot them down as well. So, yeah.
Isn't it great how we've become like Russia-Ukraine war experts, and now we've become Israeli Hamas war experts?
We have been experts on this program.
Yeah, everyone's become
since 2018. Okay,
from 2 years ago we were COVID experts. Remember that?
Yeah. I remember when we were Syria experts. That's how long I've been here.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah. I've wanted to run two things by you. I saw that Arjun was posting that now Russia has like military aims, but I guess it goes into two questions go into one.
I haven't seen it. My brother said he started watching 5 minutes of it. He goes, it was so cringe he couldn't take it.
Nah, but no, but apparently, is it true that Russia has military aims now, that they're not lying about it anymore?
Aims to who?
That they're going to they have territorial aims. Sorry, that's what Arjun's territorial.
To where?
Aims. Well,
to Israel?
I don't know. Here's my second question, though. Here's my second question. Say that Israel gets involved in a protracted Vietnam-style urban warfare with the Arab world, right? Mm-hmm. Now, America, they have no choice. As much as they like their little pet in Kyiv, they love Israel even more. We all know this, right? Yeah. So all the munitions that the West is fastly depleting in, fastidiously depleting in, because of the absolutely of both the Ukrainians and now the Israelis. That line in Goodfellas, I can't be paying the vigorous debt that Jimmy Conway demands of me. So that was Morty the hair guy. So we know this is true. Now, what happens if by the winter, by Christmas, Israel gets involved in a situation where they need Western munitions? Now, say by the spring.
Well, the Pentagon already said that they're running low even for Israel.
Yes. Now, would it not be a perfect time for Putler and Gerasimov and Shoigu to take Odessa and mobilize?
Yeah. About that.
Oh, yeah, that's right.
Odessa. It's a Russian city, you know. So, I mean, I don't know. The only way that could happen, because they've already made a statement a few weeks ago, right? The only for quite some time, what Russia is waiting for is a collapse. What they wanted from the beginning of this war was a collapse, and what they still want is a collapse. And the collapse would ensue a civil war within Ukraine for those pro or against Russia, pro or against Europe, right? Yeah. They would be forced to make that decision. That is something that Russia wanted from the start.
Yes.
It didn't get it, right? Because people sat on the fence. Now, and also the latest poll shows that 60% of all Ukrainians still want, these are territories, of course, that are controlled by Ukraine. Some of this, who knows? Maybe these people are afraid to answer in the negative. Okay, I don't know. I don't know how the poll is done. I know a 58-year-old woman 2 weeks ago was thrown in jail for upvoting certain things on Telegram, right?
Whoa.
So
she was upvoting Intel Slava Z, I think. I don't know. I'm kidding. I'm joking.
Yeah. So, the higher numbers are around Kiev, Chernigov, and Western Ukraine. The lowest numbers are in Odessa, Mykolaiv, parts of even in Zaporozhye, and then the fire in Ukraine-controlled Donetsk, but under 60, like at 52%. Right now, I think what that says to me is, as things are currently, and you have to understand, like they might think the war is not that bad, that Ukraine can still win it, right? They might be thinking that. America will eventually go in. No, that poll was done before war broke out with Hamas and Israel, right? So what he's waiting for basically is for them to make a decision for once and for all, and he wants that collapse to come. He wants this conflict, which could be very short-lived, because let's say America in 2025 doesn't have the money to fund it.
Yeah.
Right. If that's the case, then yeah, I can see him going for Odessa, but probably no bullet would have to be fired. That's ultimately what he wants.
Right. I mean, if there was a total collapse,
if he bombed Ukraine the way Israel bombed Gaza, right, he would not be like, he would create like a Western Ukraine all across Ukraine.
Yeah. So, but that's what I mean. Like, what would happen if the Kiev regime were to collapse internally and the West hadn't acted enough to sort of like rein it in? I think they probably would take Odessa.
This is a scary situation for the West.
Yes.
The West does not want a powerful Ukraine, whether it wins or loses.
Oh yeah, that's
because that's a threat, right? We've said on previous shows how like the Bandera stuff would have to go away, right? They could not. If Russia was defeated, if Russia had a regime,
what would happen to those Banderites? I wonder.
Yeah. Well, I mean, a lot of them are dying right now, anyways.
Yeah.
Right.
True.
I would say that they don't like, for America, they would want this war to last forever to some degree, even if the war doesn't get very hot anymore and there's just like terrorist attacks. For instance, there was a guy in the Kherson region. He died of wounds because there was a terrorist attack on his car. This is in the Russian-controlled area of Kherson. In Lugansk a few weeks ago, there was another like public council guy for some kind of, I don't know, some kind of economic forum or something. A public works guy, right? Maybe a city council guy. He was attacked. He survived, but I'm just saying these attacks go on all the time. Like even in Rostov-on-Don, like there was this is a hilarious video. There was a young guy who was going to throw like a small bomb at a recruiting office. He was caught. They opened his backpack. They found a dildo. The FSB guys they're laughing, and the guy goes, "D gay? Are you gay?" I'm trans.
Oh my god. Oh man.
That's too good.
So that's what I mean. Like good. if you're a
thank you,
right,
Putler.
Yeah, Putler. Heart in your heart, Putler.
Isn't that so good? Heart in your heart, Putler.
Oh my god. Yeah, who was it? Was it Iranians that said that, or was it
the Palestinians?
Yeah, the Palestinians.
It's amazing. The war.
Heart in your heart, Putler. Increase your attacks.
Yeah, it was at a wedding. The war is literally less than 3 weeks old.
Yeah.
This video comes out. Palestine knows the score. They know the whole big geopolitical score.
Yeah.
Because he says, hit Taiwan, tell China to hit Taiwan. Yeah, like they know like all the places that have to be hit. These guys are geopolitical, like
Yeah, they're not like low IQ savages the way that most people portray them, but
yeah. They know
Yeah.
where the fault lines are, right? They know like who had who.
They live next to the biggest fault line. My God, of course they know.
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah, that was incredible. Yeah, 3 weeks into the war, harden your heart, oh Putin, increase your attacks.
Send the Ukrainian women, we will marry them. That's what that was one of the lines.
Oh God, that was what I was gonna say. Is that if you're like a far right, like Kraken or Azov battalion in Ukraine,
that must have infuriated them.
Oh yeah. No, but if the regime collapses, you're not gonna go back home to your, to your black metal band groupie and those like models with the spinny wheels. You're not gonna get to go home to her, man. The regime, the West is gonna take care of you. I want every far right person that supports Ukraine to know this.
Yeah.
The West is going to take care of those people. And I'm not going to talk about giving them a generous
Russia, and then we'll tell America, shut up. We're in charge now. It's so delusional.
I'm sure that America and Canada and Britain is going to let far right Banderites control Western Ukraine. Did you know that this is going to happen?
Yeah, I mean, if they think that it's not time, like if they think Russia's not going to fold, then the Banderites have to remain.
Yeah.
Which means like that culture will go into like another incubation period, or well, maybe you could call it a growth period.
Well, the Zoomers will go on to, yeah.
Yeah, it'll be substantiated one way or another because they'll need it, right?
Yeah. They need the state needs a war machine, to quote Deleuze.
Yeah.
But that's what I mean. Like, I think the future is uncertain at this point, but I think it is an interesting thought to see that if Putin is smart enough to see, well, okay, if the West is distracted with Israel, then, maybe.
Yeah. Why not? He's gonna take advantage of it, right? He already,
and the Ukrainian military is weakened anyways.
He already got his boy, Kim Jong-un.
No, but I wanted to ask you two, what is the relationship like now between Putler and Bibi? Because they used to be like kind of begrudging friends back in the day, but now it's like.
I don't know. Well, the Palestinian Authority, Abbas, was in Moscow yesterday, and the president of Iraq went there today. What does that tell you? Right. I mean, Bibi can't go there, right? He's not going to go to Moscow now.
It's too unoptical.
No, it's too unpalatable. Even if this didn't happen, him going there would be difficult.
Oh, absolutely.
Given because you could argue like there was a color revolution attempt to get rid of Bibi in Israel.
Yeah. Right.
Because again, he's aligned tentatively with the Russians because he believes like.
The Obama-Biden regime.
Iran can never be allowed to prosper ever. It can never be trusted. Whereas the liberal Jews, both in America and in Israel, believe that if they turned them into millionaires, right, that they'll become liberal and decadent. And of course that exists everywhere. But that's their strategy, right? And then Russia can be cut off, and then they get all of Russia's resources. Europe has a new future, but without Russia, so that doesn't.
Oh yeah, that really worked
America
in the 1990s
on edge
with Russia, right?
Well, that's what they want, right?
Yeah. No, but I mean, like Bibi, I think in his mind, it was a case of like, okay, the libtards in Tel Aviv and the Supreme Court hate me. The Obama-Biden crime family hates me, and they also hate Putin. And I think like during the 2010s, that was the impetus. But now that Putin has more or less aligned himself with Iran and the revolutionary government in Iran, that relationship's out of the window, I think.
Yeah. You're right. That's finished. I think that was always something. Now, Bibi had to have known, like, Russia's been working in partnership with Iran for a long time, even when he was president before Bennett. But I think he always felt like, he could persuade him.
It was no big
because
deal.
of course they both have interests in Syria that are diametrically opposed.
Yes.
But yeah, he could make a play. I mean,
I
maybe
think because
maybe
he knows
Putler
that
doesn't. Maybe
Putin...
Putler isn't going to be happy with just Odessa. Maybe he wants Jerusalem. Did you think of that?
Bring up those pictures of Putin from 2014 with the kippah and the
I can just picture it now.
This is the real
a 10 million man army made up of the Taliban, the Chinese army, just closing in on Jerusalem.
This is
It's
unironically
over for you guys.
Third world is believed.
Well, it's unironically what boomers believe the end times will be like.
Yes.
Yeah. All the brown people of the world are going to rise up against Israel. Yeah.
Oh my God. They're throwing pride parade people off the buildings and
Oh no, the Chinese are going to invade Jerusalem. The Chinese, the Russians, the Taliban.
All of them will be gathered. The Iranians, the Taliban, all of them will get along for just.
They're going to chant God, please. We're going to chant, death to America together.
Kadyrov will lead the Muslim faction.
Yes. Yeah. Kadyrov will lead the Muslims. Putler will take over Jerusalem. He will. He'll probably spare Bibi. He'll probably keep him as house arrest.
Putin will go to the holy the church of the.
Dome of the Rock.
No, well, yeah, of course, but Kadyrov will go there, but Putin will go to the sepulcher, and
he will sacrifice the red calf.
No, that's not. No, it's not going to be a red calf.
No.
No. So, and he'll say, "I told you a two-state solution would have worked. You left me no choice."
You left us no choice. That's going to be the future.
You brought this upon yourself.
And you know who is going to engineer that all?
Oy vey.
Yes.
Who?
Dugin.
Alexander Dugin.
Yeah. That's right. Why aren't our nuclear weapons working? Dugin, I hijacked them. My friends at Killnet did this.
It's God's
actually, the Israelis
only work for Russia.
Killnet actually boasted. I mean, this is Telegram, right? But apparently, Killnet boasted that they hacked the Israelis.
Whoa!
Mm-hmm. So I don't think that this is enough for Putler. He wants Jerusalem.
Yeah, he wants Jerusalem.
Yeah,
that's
gonna put Erdogan on edge.
Turkey.
Yeah. Putler's gonna go. Look, do you want me to fight for Tsargrad? Huh? That's how we stay Constantinople. You really want to fight?
You're gonna, Zhirinovsky's going to resurrect from the grave. He's gonna see this glorious future. Have you seen
the video? Like, that video was so crazy from a few years ago.
Yeah.
He says there's not going to be elections in Ukraine in 2024 because there won't be a country left, and then trouble in the Middle East in Israel will happen. He literally said, but you know what? It's not the only uncanny thing he's ever said that has come to pass.
Yeah, no, he said a lot of things that came to pass.
Yeah, like the war in Ukraine. But 20 years ago.
Oh, what's so funny? I remember, I don't remember, I was too young, but you're, researching when you're older. Back in the day, in the 90s, a lot of these boomer truth, these end times boomers, these conspiratoids, they thought that Zhirinovsky was going to be the Antichrist. Did you see this?
Oh my God.
They thought that he was
stupid.
No, they thought that he was an agent of global communism. And I remember
my communism.
Do you know do you know that YouTuber? He's actually from Toronto. He's from Tirana. Bright Sun Films.
Say that again.
Bright Sun Films.
Okay, I'm not sure.
Well, he does urban exploration, does businesses, video essays.
Okay.
He,
And
okay.
what did he say?
No, but here's a weird coincidence. So
Mm.
he was urban exploring this house in Northern Ontario that the Schizo owned, and he would like record all these like radio shows. And Bright Sun Films actually took, because he usually his policy is to never take anything from, you know, the urban exploration code, right? But he took these cassettes, and they were tapes. They were like tapes from these old radio shows that the Schizo guy that was living in this house used to listen to.
I love stuff like this.
I love stuff like, I absolutely love stuff like this. Me too. And get this, one of them was a recording from the John Oakley show from 1995 in local Ontario AM radio. We're talking about how Zaranovsky, this guest that John Oakley had, was talking about how Zaranovsky is going to help bring about the Antichrist in the new century.
Oh my God.
Yes! This is like total Southern Ontario, like conservatard Kino from the 90s. And it just so happened that Bright Sun Films had to go in that house and take that recording. Probably never exists anywhere else, and he like played it on air. I could find the video for you. And like Bright Sun Films like, I hate that stuff, conspiracy stuff where Zaranovsky's gonna help bring about the Antichrist. It's stupid. You know. But yeah,
I know you're the Antichrist. How do you know? Because you hate free market capitalism. You have to be.
Yeah, absolutely. And he's
you
right.
hate free market capitalism. You're evil.
No, this is what conservatives.
You're as evil as it gets. These people are so stupid.
This is what boomer conspiracy theorists of the 1990s believed, that Zaranovsky. You know about this?
I didn't know. This is amazing.
Yeah, they thought Zaranovsky was going to bring about the Antichrist.
Oh wow, they didn't meet Dugan yet. You know I'm really a sorcerer, right?
Oh my God.
Yeah.
Don't look up Dugan's quotes about black people.
I'm going to pretend I'm an old Orthodox believer, but I'm a satanic communist.
But the sex magic part, that's the old believer I do. That's like my thing.
Yeah,
that's
yeah.
Just, yeah.
That's incredible.
Well, I mean,
how in the world did you find this?
I felt, because I watched Bright Sun Film. He's a very popular YouTuber, but
Bright Sun Film.
Yeah, Bright Sun Films.
Okay. Wow.
And no, but it's funny because Dugan, if you look at some of those Nazball women back in the day, you got to realize he was doing those, like, you know, sex rituals.
Really?
Oh, well, there's speculation.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. I mean, I don't know. I mean, these could just be his critics, but there are people that said he was into some pretty weird stuff back in the 90s. I mean, he's into some weird stuff now, Dugan, but, you know, that's neither here. I mean, guy, come on. He's got that, you know, charisma thing, the animal magnetism.
The Kavorka.
Yeah.
Remember Seinfeld, the Kavorka? Kramer has the Kavorka.
Oh, man.
The nun leaves like her.
That was like David Koresh had like a 90 IQ thing going on, but he just like, you know, raw animal magnetism is what did it.
Yeah.
Right. It's funny because my friend Martin.
I'm like literally remembering the guy, and I'm thinking, yeah, raw animal magnetism. Like, some women just love kooks because raw animal magnetism.
Yeah, I mean, Jim Morrison was like that, you know.
Yeah.
I mean, he predicted everything in the end. Like, if you listen to that song closely, I think he predicted, you know, our times. I'm not joking. No, I wrote. I was actually in my youth quite fascinated by him and what he was writing. I kind of discovered him because I was reading Dylan Thomas, and I found out Jim Morrison liked Dylan Thomas. So, anyways. Oh, that's what I mean. But anyways, yeah. So, by the way, how is the war going? And I mean, see, nobody talks about it anymore. All of a sudden,
it's over.
Who
cares? We got a new war.
We got a new, yeah. Oh, the old and the new.
I mean, the only big change, and it is actually a big change, is the Russians. It seems, it's still preliminary, that the Russians have gone on the offensive of Avdiivka.
Oh yeah, and Dievka, I heard. Yeah.
Yeah. So yes, something is up. I can see how they would want to take it. It's an area that's been contested for a very long time. It's that one area that, like, even back in 2015, 16, like, fighting there never stopped.
Yeah.
So, it would be a big deal if they got it. It is. There are a lot of high rises, particularly in the southern part, but they've made a big move towards the railway north of Avdiivka, and if they cut it off, right, they have a real chance of taking it.
Oh yeah.
I think the Russians have been pretty cautious about going on the offensives, because you're going to lose a lot of people, and they don't want to. They want to conserve as many people as possible
for the final God-inspiring apocalyptic war.
Yeah,
that's going to happen between the West and the rest.
Putin draws a wry smile. He goes, "Bro, I'm not going to waste all my troops here. I got Jerusalem to think about."
Yeah, sending the troops to Zion immediately.
Yeah,
it's going to be like a Soulfly album, Blood, Fire, War, Hate.
All of this likes to make me imagine that Putin's entire foreign policy team is run by paradox gamers.
Oh, that's true.
Just like where the ultimate end are just these goals, like, oh, we're gonna retake Jerusalem next. Like what you do when you sit down in front of this and you just play on the historical simulators. That's what it feels like, and I'm honestly
we're living in the end times right now.
I can't. I want to disagree, but I can't think of anything coherent to say that would
I think Father Seraphim was. I mean, I'm not Orthodox, but I think Father Seraphim, he pretty much was right that the next century we're going to see like some pretty hairy stuff. Yeah.
Yeah.
Death to the world. That's what I say.
You've seen those T-shirts?
Yeah. I should buy one of those T-shirts for my GF.
Mm-hmm.
Death to the world.
Who is this? Are they well known? They're not a band, honey. But they should be.
They should be, yeah. That was a great article, like Orthodox Christianity and punk rock. Did you read that?
No, I haven't seen it. No.
I think it was in Death to the World magazine.
Oh, really?
Yeah. There was a book that was compiling this magazine. I remember reading it. I think Matthew the Stout showed me it. But there was this connection between underground punk rock and Orthodox Christianity in America and in Europe. And, I think...
Can't Putin leave anything alone?
I know. Apparently, Gerasimov is a big boomer rock appreciator. No, sorry, really? Medvedev. Yeah, he's a big boomer rock appreciator. Is that he engineered all of this because he was listening to the Doors, he was listening to the end, and he took the words of Jim Morrison to start the apocalyptic war with Degenerate West. And that's why I think the Russians are doing what they're doing, because they're inspired by the hippies and God.
No one would have guessed.
No, see, like, you gotta know these things. I did on my channel. I did an hour-long video like a few years ago, analyzing that song in the end. I think.
Wow, that's interesting.
I think Dmitry, he was inspired by them, and I mean, he's a fan of the Doors, and I think that there's something to it. There's not schizo. I mean, this is schizo. It's been 3 hours.
It's less schizo than anything you would hear on cable television. I'll just put it that way. Like, you turn on CNN, you turn on Fox.
100%.
This is more coherent than anything you will hear on the media. And we're 2.5 hours into this, and you know how it gets when you start to cross that line. War Report, right?
War Report, geopolitics becomes theory fiction. Okay. Sorry, the horror report. Did you see what Mari was doing in the streets of Chicago, smoking a cigarette? And did you see what Rad Femme Austrian Painter was doing? I mean, I'm trying to think of e-girls here. The horror report.
None of these
Oh,
words.
the horror report. Did you see about Mia Khalifa? Did you see?
Oh yeah,
of the horror report? That was so funny, man. She ain't even that good looking for a Lebanese woman. I've seen some pretty good looking Lebanese women. Yeah. And she's got like got like this fucking.
Everybody knows what she's got.
Yeah, she's got the rest is
oh my god, they're literally gigantic.
Yeah, that's all artificial. But like, no, but like, you know what the thing is? Mia Khalifa. There's this one picture where she's like in fucking bikini, where there's stupid millennial line tattoos, smoking a doober, and it's like this is the aesthetic of like the racially ambiguous baddie that I fucking hate.
Yes,
women.
yeah.
They got this Instagramifiable like millennial baddie, like I smoking weed, tattoos.
You man.
Yeah, I hate it. I hate Israel. Well, apart from that, that's pretty base. But like, I hate Israel now. But I hate Israel for gay libtarded reasons, not for the not for
we are not the same.
Yeah, you hate Israel because you're a libtard. I hate Israel because it's like the average like TRS listener is like, I hate Israel for pure reasons. We're not the same. No, but like I remember that picture they were using, and she's got like the racially ambiguous millennial baddie that smokes weed and like supports libtard. Like she was posting this picture I saw where it's like the native, like the indigenous person next to the Indian. She's like Happy Columbus Day, where it's like the indigenous woman giving the middle finger to the crowd, like. It's just like that type of shit.
Mm-hmm.
It makes it hard to support Palestine when you see like Western.
Yeah, my friend sent me stuff like that recently.
Yeah,
and it's like, dude, I've seen this shit for like you have no idea how many years. Yeah, like. I know about this group. I know.
Well, you remember in Toronto.
They're hardcore Palestine supporters, and they're like, yes, I know, I get it.
You remember the Israeli apartheid protests?
Oh yeah,
yeah, I do. Ryan, yeah. I remember it was funny because the week it happened in like 2011 or like 2010. Sid Ryan goes on the Michael Corrin show, and you have like 3 like Israel's strongest soldier supporters, and they're just like grilling him. It's like, how can you do this to us? How can you not allow Israeli academics in Canada? Speaking of Canada, one last news item, guys. Did you see that Trudeau? Now, you'd think that, like, the libtards and the OnlyFans girls, because apparently Mia Khalifa, she doesn't do real prawn anymore. She does OnlyFans and Playboy, which is really a cop-out. But, like, did you see that Justin Trudeau, the most libtarded world leader alive, that he threw the Palestinians under the bus, even though Canadian leftoids have always had this thing about Palestine? Did you see this?
I did. What
do you guys think about that?
I mean,
par for the course, really. This doesn't shock me at all.
It is now.
It is now, yeah.
Because think, it's like those videos of libtards blaming everything that's happening right now in Israel on Putin.
Yeah.
Like, right? They finally have, like, before it was, well, it's colonialism, and Jews went through the Holocaust, and
it's an apartheid state.
It's complex, right? Now it's like, well, Putin took advantage of all of that.
Yeah,
right?
Yeah.
He didn't respect all our contradictions. What an asshole!
Oh my God! No, but that's what I mean. Like, it's incredible because you'd figure that Justin Trudeau, he would great with the norm, and he would go along with all the libtards to be like, you know what? Fuck those people. 100% pro-Palestine. Let's go. Let's wear the scarf. What's the scarf called? The Palestinian scarf.
I forget the name of it, but yeah,
the one that
ends with LA law, like something.
Yeah, something like that. You'd figure he would go along with it, but no, he like legit said that Hamas, they're terrorists and Palestine's a terrorist state, and it's like,
Yeah,
wow,
they've slowly changed all of that, right? They've
yeah,
like
yeah,
the left has been like all of that has been gutted. It's
yeah,
like
yeah.
it's from a bygone era, right? And
Bush era politics they abandoned, yeah,
and prior, yeah,
and prior. Yeah. Well, yeah, they're right, because in the 80s and the 70s, 80s, and 90s, they were really pro-Palestine too.
oh
The
yeah,
radical
people
academics.
like in my time in the late 80s, early 90s, like everybody like
My old man remembers
had one of
this.
those shawls, that
Yeah.
like, you had that with leather jacket,
Yeah, kind of like, what was her name? The one that had Stockholm syndrome. What's her name? What was her name? Patty
I'm
Hearst.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. No, but yeah, back in the day, like to be pro-Palestine was this like edgy, chic, radical, like like I support the Baader Meinhof in Germany type of shit.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm gonna make.
Well, Gordon, you're old enough. You remember all this.
I do remember all this. I literally, even though I was like a little kid, I remember the Baader Meinhof when that happened, especially when the plane landed in Ethiopia. That was just crazy. That was all over the news.
And they trained with was it the PLO or was it I forget, some Middle Eastern group.
Might very well have been them.
Yeah, I think it was the PLO they trained with. Yeah. There was this British woman who was a journalist that went with them that got recruited, and she had sex with a PLO guy. They made a movie about her. It was like in the 70s, 80s.
I'm sorry, women are just such idiots.
Did you see that? Did you see the IDF women that the recruits? They're terrified in the bunker.
Yeah.
Oh, imagine getting strafe bombed by a Gila Klein. H3H3.
Yeah.
She was in the IDF. Can you imagine her like pressing the drone button to like just redact your whole family? Just like this goblin-looking woman, just like, God, that's terrible. Like it's listen, a lot of Israeli women. I mean, they, most of the Sephardi's look pretty good, but I mean, that's okay. We joke about it, but really, do you think these people? Does the Western media have a stomach for a very intense urban war where, like, good-looking mid-women from Israel are going to get domed and have their brains splattered in the streets? I don't know.
Look at the people they mobilized for this recent wave.
Yeah.
300,000 men.
Oh, that's horrible.
That's who they mobilized. The women thing has always been a stupid PR stunt, no matter whether it's in Israel, it's in Ukraine.
Yeah.
It is something that they pull out because that's what you do in the West. That is acceptable. That is what we've seen for the past 50 years in all these movies. The badass woman warrior who can take down a man 3 times their size, blah, blah, blah. But when push comes to shove, look how the fighting's actually being done. And, I mean, look at the initial incursion into Israel from the Gaza Strip. And I know that, of course, war atrocity propaganda is a thing, and as we saw with some of the more controversial stories, some of them were just outright denied by the IDF. But I mean, we do have some documented cases. Look at how the women and civilians were treated when they pushed in, and conversely, you can find plenty of examples on the Israeli side. I'm not trying to be biased here. I'm sure everyone gets that point, but look, and I think anyone who thinks I'm saying this is right or justifiable has to be a moron and has to be completely ignoring context. But these are the things that happen when all-out war comes to your land. I mean, it has happened since the beginning of war, and the idea that
sexual violence and war has gone together since literally Cain and Abel. Like, I hate to say it, but it's terrible, it's disgusting, but it's the truth.
I mean, it's the reduction of humans to absolute.
You know who invented the concept of gentleman war? Constantine. You know who invented that concept? Europeans.
Yeah.
British.
I figured you'd have something more specific, but I knew Europeans. That's really
the gentleman war. Yeah, of course. And look at the Second World War. It still happened. I mean, a lot of Germans committed terrible acts against Russian women. Hey, but if you look at what happened with Berlin and the Red Army, say no more. You know, like,
and there was also well, famously Wellington, right? Wellington is famous for like deriding his troops as being nothing but some pathetic rabble, and the only thing they were good for was fighting and dying. But they took a town. I don't know if it was in Spain or France. I don't know, but they, for 2 days they just sort of pillaged and raped.
Yeah,
and then anybody else that went
it might be
longer than
controversial
that,
to
they were
say,
hung.
but going back to the World War II example, actually, even with everything that happened on the Eastern Front, I would still say what happened in the Pacific was far worse in that regard. Once again, going
to
back
Berlin,
to
you mean?
yeah, I would
No.
I would even say look,
Oh yeah.
that what the Japanese did in the Pacific far worse. And I think that once again goes back to the idea that the Europeans, even in their most debased state in World War II, had far more of the gentleman war, I guess, as it's called, than whatever the hell was happening in East Asia at the time. And yeah, it goes back to the point where the way war has been fought for the past 300 years, that has been the exception, and people are they don't realize it. I mean, even what's happening in Russia and Ukraine right now, and even as brutal as some of the acts on specifically the Ukrainian side I'm referring to with a lot of the reprisals, that is still nothing compared to what we've seen out of the past 72 hours in the Middle East.
Oh yeah,
100%. I mean, let's face it. Let's not lie to ourselves. There has been documented cases on both sides of sexual assault. You could say that in Ukraine there's probably way more because of the intense ethnic hatred they have of Russians. But I mean, what you see, if there is a war in the Middle East, I mean, it's gonna make, maybe not in terms of body count or mechanized warfare or property destruction, but in terms of savagery and violence on both sides, I mean, it's going to be, it's something that unspeakable stuff you can't even say on YouTube, put it that way.
I mean, for example, going back to actually one of the controversies out of the Russia-Ukraine war that turned out to be the exact opposite when they accused the Russians of digging mass graves when they actually were giving proper
kombucha.
I don't know
the drink.
I don't know if it was that. It was one of them, but they were giving proper burials to enemy Ukrainian soldiers, and it marked graves, everything, and that was called a mass grave. I mean, once again, do you think you're going to see this on either the Israeli or the Palestinian side? Absolutely not. You're not going to see that. And I'm not even trying.
I believe they had an Orthodox priest bless the grave sites too, if I recall.
Yeah, it was like all done completely above board in that. And like I said, I'm not even trying to be some sort of like European or white triumphalist here. I'm just saying this is objectively what has happened and objectively what is happening.
Oh yeah, 100%. But it's going to be, I mean, like I always say, I seem to come around this point every time I'm on the show, that as much as we joke and we meme and we speculate and we do a little bit of theory fiction with geopolitics, and it's funny, and it is funny, but I think the greater tragedy is that a lot of people are potentially going to die in the most horrific way. A lot of people will be assaulted. A lot of people will be displaced. A lot of people are going to suffer untold amounts of misery. And we live in the world, I can't help but think that we live in a very demonic system. And a lot of this is because of, various nefarious forces, without getting into specifics. But a lot of people are going to suffer because of this. A lot of people have suffered because of it. And you know what? The Israelis that died, they didn't deserve to die, obviously. Those civilians that had their fucking brains splattered out in the, in the road. It's not, war is not anything that, to be celebrated or whatever. But at the end of the day, I mean, there is a lot of things in history, and in politics that have led up to this situation.
Oh, absolutely. And
a lot of people are not willing to examine their priors. But yeah, sorry, go ahead, Cons.
To continue on your point there, as you said, that a lot of people who have done no wrong and certainly do not deserve it are going to be killed, displaced, or just have their lives completely
or
upended.
Something worse.
It's going to, of course, we do have to look at Israel-Palestine, direct, immediate effect. But this is going to have global ramifications. This is going to be something that is going to affect the lives and livelihoods of the average person anywhere in the world, similar to Russia and Ukraine, where, sure, the Europeans aren't out on the front lines fighting in this war, but their cost of living has gotten higher. Their social services at home have degraded. I mean, look at Germany. Their industry has just completely fled the country. And that you will have these secondary and tertiary effects across the world as a result of this. Maybe not as much as, say, the major war in Europe, just because of how pivotal Russia is, or I suppose was, to the global economy, at least insofar as it was interconnected with the West, just because it's so resource rich and such a large nation. But once again, we're talking about potentially millions of people displaced. Where do you think they're going to go? Do you think that the Arab states are going to have as generous as a refugee policy as maybe they would have 50 years ago? I don't think so. There's, of course, Europe with its border that's wide open, and that's probably where most of them are going to go. And I don't mean to be a bleeding heart about this, but it's not going to be a comfortable life for the displaced people, and certainly not going to improve the situation in Europe that is already still trying to cope with the 2015 mass migration crisis. And like you said, there's a lot of jokes to be made here, and perhaps that is some of the way that you actually do have to cope with this. But we're looking at not only the immediate death and despair that's going to be in the actual war zone, but we're looking at millions, if not tens or hundreds of millions of people, are going to have their lives completely upended by this.
Yeah. And you know what? And also, I would add to that, again, being an artist and art critic, I mean, we're going to see the return of GOWA, global war on terror, GOWAR aesthetic.
Oh yeah, we're back on that train.
Yeah, we're going to see the insurgents with the face masks and the Palestinian headbands, and they have their AK-47 vests. It's going to be total, that's going to, that's already, you're seeing the aesthetic of this insurgent. It's terrifying, and then who knows, as soon as the IDF gets employed, we've all seen the footage of those tanks being exploded, and it's going to be like I remember when I was a kid, I would look up on the TV, and there would be there'd be insurgents videos on the news, and my old man would be watching it, and you'd see them in those those eye hole masks with the headband. Yeah, man, it's coming back,
Bride's warning you to just accept another COVID lockdown, but this is your punishment.
Yeah, this is it. Yeah.
Yeah, and
what, they're gonna bring it back, man. Limp Bizkit and Creed are gonna tour again.
Who tipped off? Who tipped off Hamas? We did. You wouldn't accept another COVID lockdown. Now we have to lockdowns for terrorism.
Yeah, Klaus. He tipped off Hamas.
Klaus Schwab always wins.
Schwab and Fingelding. If we can't have COVID, we're gonna have terror.
Right.
It's sort of like one of my favorite Mystery Grove tweets. Peace. Buy book, go buy book, go buy book. Of course they want money, but what they really want is to kill you.
Yeah. Everything revolves around that. I mean, they want to kill you once in a while, but not all the time.
The migrants, yeah.
Of
course they want money, but they really want to kill you.
I believe it.
And you have leftists saying that that tweet was funny, man. With that factors I mean, if POC people wanted to rise up and do the revolution, go all I'd be perfectly fine with having off. You know, some by POC trans person.
All of
Oh
this
man.
this
Anyways,
reminds me of a point that,
mm,
and I'll just finish off this because we're pushing the 3 hour mark. That's something I had forgotten to
The
mention.
global left has a death drive. That's the whole point. The
I,
global left has the Freudian nirvanic principle of civilization.
look,
Destroy the
GSP,
world. They want the world to go down with the ship with them.
you've forced me to say it, but the
mm.
left has gone insane.
The left.
That's the root of all of this. We could have cut the show like by 2 hours and 50 minutes had I just said that outright. The left has gone insane, and that's
Mia Khalifa has gone insane.
It's the road to that statement, you know.
but okay, fair. But the point I was actually trying to make that I want to close the show out with is we're already seeing the preliminary parts of this. But if this does escalate, you have to realize the diaspora of both nations is far larger than what it was, say, in 2001 or even 2014, and that we're going to see street battles between Palestinian diaspora and Jewish diaspora. Like I said, we're already seeing the beginnings of this. We're going to see
In New
this
York.
mass scale in every major city in the West. And
Yeah, that's right.
yeah, like
in New York.
yeah, and the violence and bloodshed is not going to be limited to the Levant. It's going to happen on potentially the streets of your city. And I'm not just saying this to be hyperbolic. I'm no, it's gotten this. I mean, what was it just a few months back? You had the Indians and the Pakistanis fighting in the streets of the UK. Like, this isn't unprecedented anymore.
Yeah.
Oh, don't forget the Khalistani and in Hindus in
Oh,
Canada.
oh yeah, that's right.
Yeah.
They're putting out hits on a. Yeah, that's
Yeah.
Indian intelligence is just. They're the next Mossad. All that Twitter shilling has bought them invaluable resources and knowledge. Who would have thought? But no. Point being is these conflicts will become globalized because these nations have become globalized. And as much as I say this in a flippant tone, no, I am serious that the average everyday person, you, somebody you know, us, might be a casualty in the street brawls because these people are too cowardly to fight it out in their own nations.
100%.
You back?
Yeah, but that's all I had. And I think that the Mossad is sabotaging our connection at the 3 hour mark. So if anyone has any final remarks, get them in before they cut the connection again.
Yeah, I gotta go, boys. It's been great.
Okay. It has been great. Thank you for coming by, Gio.
Oh man, this has been a blast. We've covered so much ground. I'll see you, boys.
All right. God bless. Take care.
Okay, see ya. Thank you, everyone, for tuning into this episode of the War Report. We will see you guys next time, and goodbye.
Bye.